We have, we have a 19-point agenda. Was it properly posted? All right. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by McKee.
Second.
By Reddish. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we have an agenda. Minutes from the October 7th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Yeah, Bob. was saying I'm like,
All right, motion by Reddish, second by McKee. Any discussion on the minutes? And I will note for the record that we do have a quorum. We have Supervisor Severson and Frank online and McKee, Reddish, and Luck in the room.
Apologize for the lateness. I'm here.
Great. Can you hear us okay, Bob?
Yes, I can.
All right, cool. All right, that brings us to item number 5. Public safety response to resolution 20, I'm sorry I'm shouting, but I feel like I have to shout for the owl. I'll try to talk normal. 2296, that will be our response. So I don't know if you guys all noticed, but I did update our response with additional information from the DA last night. So the new version is on our iPads. Everything else is the same. I just changed some of the language. So my thought today is we would go through these starting at the top. And one of the questions we have to ask for each item is for those that are not meeting the required reduction and or increase in revenue, do we want to say that that needs to be on the referendum? So well, let's just start with the clerk of court. So the clerk of court's office, we talked about this last time. The clerk is not using health insurance and they feel confident that they can increase their collections to meet the required amount. So essentially they've met what was asked of them. So the coroner will be the first one where the only way to reduce their allocation, their budget, would be to reduce staff salaries, which is the coroner and calling deputies. I don't know how they could respond to deaths in the county by cutting their salaries. I mean, the only way to do that would be for them not to respond, and that's a statutory requirement that we respond to deaths in the county. So does anyone have any objections to what is written here as far as that we are not asking that they make the $21,179,000 in goods? Right. So then the question becomes, should this be something we say we would like on the referendum? And I will make one comment but I very much want to hear what the rest of you have to say. To me, I feel a little, I don't even know what the right word is. I feel that it's a little bit unusual and strange to ask the public for more money for something that's a core function we're supposed to be providing with the taxes we already get. Is that?
Chair Luck, this is Bob. I completely agree with that. As a core service, there's no reason I think we should be going to a referendum for things that are required by the county.
I agree with that also.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger picture, then gets to, well, what do we do when we, still have these huge, let's just say we've cut everything that's not statutorily required. And we still have these big deficits. There still begs that question, but we don't know the answer to that yet. So at this point, I feel like we can respond with, no, we don't think this should go on the referendum because we think it's a core service that should be provided with what we are already getting from the taxpayers. Unless someone has something else they'd like us to add.
No, and it's functioning at a bare minimum.
Bare minimum,
Bare.
tiny budget.
There's nothing. So it shouldn't go to referendum. It shall be covered in the levy, 100%.
Okay, so I didn't say that sentence of what I just said in the corners because I didn't actually add any language. So actually, I'm gonna open it on my computer so I can type this. But should we just say, no, we don't want it on the referendum, or no, we don't want it on the referendum because we think it's a core service that should be covered?
I would suggest that it go on that we don't want referendum referendum because it's
You're cutting up.
court serve.
I'm assuming that's him. Bob, we couldn't hear any.
Already at
He'll understand that.
Oh, I don't know what 10-1 means, but I said we don't understand him.
Is it better now?
No, we can't understand you at all.
Okay.
Oh, we got the
There you
okay.
go. Okay, King Claire. Thank you.
Oh, we're not talking. Do you want to try again, Bob?
All right, I'll try it again. I would recommend that the language say, do not go to referendum because it is a core service and it's already at a minimum level.
Do not go to referendum because it is a core service and is already, sorry, I'm typing in, core service and is already operating. Operating 2 minutes. At a minimal level, at a efficient level, at a,
Minimum.
Bare minimum, I mean, you can't get any less that I can think of.
budget. Okay, so that brings us to the district attorney's office. So we had originally talked about that because of the reorganization in their office this year, with the new position that was budgeted for 2022, that they are going to be under budget by $76,000. And that remains true.
Yes.
However, the district attorney was in contact with me to let me know, and you can read it here, that because of the reorganization, a different person took the position, which is reimbursed 50%, right?
Which is reimbursed 50%. And so we'll be yielding at least $10,000 a year. I put that as a round number. I know next year it's 11,400 and something. So it's not going to be 10, it's going to be increasing, but I didn't want to say it's going to be $50,267, but yes.
Just to briefly explain, so the person who was previously in the position that was reimbursed by the state did not take health insurance. The person who's currently taking that position does take health insurance, which means the reimbursement coming back to the office is paying for half of the health insurance that before the county was paying for in full. Does that make sense? So I was a little bit, so I decided, because it's actually starting in 2023, actually starting in 2022, the reimbursement.
Yes.
But I decided to just throw in there that it started, because we've only been looking at 24 to 27, but I decided it's a real reimbursement that's happening now. So I put down from 23 to 27. So.
And it'll continue as long as that person or a person who takes health insurance continues in that position, that funding will continue.
Right.
Past 2027.
So we don't need to ask for anything from the referendum because she has essentially covered their portion of what they were asked. So I don't think anyone have any questions or comments of anything we should add there.
Can I just provide one more comment?
Sure.
So with respect to the forfeitures, cash bond forfeitures, because we've restructured, we've been able, and we have 2 new judges, which is a significant portion of it too. We'll be able to get the cash bond forfeitures, which that's just money sitting here in the county. Most people who like to talk about this do not understand the statute. Regardless, $10,000 is certainly a very conservative amount, given that I went back and looked since September 1st. I have filed over $30,000 worth of motions on cash forfeitures, and that's only on 3 months. So that $10,000 I think will be far exceeded, but I didn't want to play that it was going to be $50,000 a year. 10 I think is well reasonable, and it's going to start next year. It might start this year, depending on what the court says.
Right. So that's the district attorney. So yay, good news. We kept one. All right, so that brings us to emergency government. Darren and I had a couple conversations talking about what you see as a potential recommendation. I'd love to hear people's thoughts. I can't say that I like this. I don't think it's a good idea to try to transfer the emergency management director position to a deputy when the deputies have enough on their plates, especially, and I did put the caveat in here that if we maintain the staffing levels in the sheriff's department, that's the only way we could have a conversation about a deputy taking on emergency management.
I probably know, Melissa, and I didn't think about this till last night. If you do assign a deputy to it, that means he's gonna lose a deputy part-time on the road,
I know.
regardless if you increase or decrease.
No, I know. So I'm aware of that, yes. So the struggle that I've been having while writing this entire document is, I don't want to go and just say we're making no staffing changes whatsoever, even though that's sort of how I feel. So I was looking for places that, is it something we could live with? Is it something we could, versus cutting a deputy altogether? Would it be better to have one assigned, as an emergency management director? But I would love to hear from the rest of the committee how we'd like to handle. We could just say that, no, we don't think that we should cut the 14, it's only 14,000 only, but it's only $14,430 that the emergency government department is asked over the 4 years to cut. So we could just say no, that there's no room. Darren said, I won't take a raise for 4 years, but that's crazy. We can't, and it's only $3,500, so not only.
Is that annual 3,500, or would it be each
No,
year?
that was cumulative. Because you're a percentage. It's only a percentage of your salary and whatever. And it's calculated raises going forward are much smaller than what we originally had indicated. Committee thoughts? I really don't want to be the one that makes all these decisions, so please. Tell me.
We knew we were gonna have to make hard decisions.
Right.
And this is one cure of not losing people, meaning a sheriff's deputy, but still saving money. To say that I'm for it, probably not, but these are the decisions we've been tasked to make.
And it doesn't mean it will happen. It's just something we're proposing that could potentially happen. I don't know.
I like it for the fact that we're not talking about pay cuts or losing people.
Well,
We're talking about, we talked many times at every committee level about multitasking, cross-training people to save money. This is just one of those efforts of cross-training people.
well, and I did have the conversation with Darren that what happens if the ambulance does become its own entity, which is what they've been tasked with looking into. And because if ambulance is no longer a part of the county, does it make sense that then that same person running the ambulance, would be able to split their time working for the county? I think it's doable, but does it make sense? And that was the conversation we had where it's,
That's a what if down the road.
well,
We
this
have
is
to
all of
cover
it, what
that.
if, yeah. Supervisor Severson or Frank, do you guys have any thoughts?
Yeah, so can you hear me okay at this point?
Yep.
All right. So my concerns here are, I guess my first comment is if it's gonna get switched to the sheriff's department needs to be fully staffed. And currently, they are not. I think there's one open position sitting on the books. It's not filled. Am I correct with that, Sheriff?
That's correct.
All right. So we have one open position that's sitting there. So to me, if it was fully staffed, this might make some sense. My other concern is as we look at the projections for the next through 2027, the deputies' numbers keep going down. Well, if deputies' numbers keep going down, then the emergency management position is going to have to go away from the sheriff's department. So we're starting to already cut that position in 2025, 26, and forward. Because that'd be the first one to come out of the budget, out of the sheriff's department, because it wouldn't be patrolling. So I'm not in favor of that it's $14,000. I guess if the committee, if the finance, if we want to propose that position is eliminated, is it a statutory requirement that we have it?
It is.
Okay, well, here again, we're back to statutory requirement. Why are we trying to cut beyond what we are supposed to be doing.
So,
To me, it's almost like the coroner.
right, so the language I have in here is if the staffing levels within the sheriff department are not reduced, one deputy could be designated for 20 hours per week as the emergency management director, and the other 20 as road patrol.
Hmm.
So that's the language I have in now, because I think when we get to the end of this conversation, we're going to be recommending we cut no jailers or road patrol deputies. And if that's the case, this was an option I thought we could potentially offer. But I'm okay with, I mean, I'll write what the majority wants.
So I guess my continuing thought on that then is, so do we have to have it as a deputy? Can this position just fall into the sheriff's department, into that budget? It's as another person. Do they have to be deputized to do it? Or is this just an opportunity to move that position into and under the sheriff's department? It's pretty much just a transfer of funds at that point.
So the position doesn't have to be deputized, because otherwise Darren wouldn't be able to do it, right? You're not deputized? No, yeah. And I have no problem with changing the language to be less specific to a deputy. It's just that the deputy positions, if we're gonna talk about cuts that those are the positions being cut, not, but I don't care. I could just say a person in the sheriff's department. It doesn't matter to me.
I guess I would leave it as a person because depending upon where it could go, could it be a future jail administrator position that gets switched or adapted? I don't know.
I have a question, Clay, on your proposal going forward in your budget, does it include filling that vacant position?
That was part of the cut.
Or was that part of your
That's part of
cut?
the cuts.
That's what I thought.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're maintaining the
It's
cut.
maintaining.
It's
that.
maintaining that cut, because it was eliminated, or it wasn't filled in 2010, and it's just not.
Right, it hasn't been filled, but.
Yeah, so we're just
on the
continuing that,
fact that
right?
if
So-
it was filled was his concern, so.
So I guess I'm gonna just throw this out there, and because I'm gonna later in the meeting ask for, I'm not sure why I'm asking, but I'm asking for another deputy that'd be paid for up to half of by the village of Lone Rock.
Right.
So, you know,
There you go, the other half time could be the emergency management.
so that's just
Is this for a
food
new-
for
so
thought.
this would be a new position?
I'm not sure, depending on the amount of hours Lone Rock wants, I'm not sure if we can cover it. I mean, we're already at 1.4 per thousand people and, 1.33
1.33.
actually.
Get it right.
Yeah,
We recalculated that yesterday.
yeah.
Well, committee. Should I leave it in as an option that at least can be discussed, or take it out completely?
I think you should take it out.
Supervisor Severson, thoughts? Or Supervisor Turk, hello, welcome.
I'm in favor of just leaving it alone as it is. Like, it's a requirement that we have to provide. It's working out good right now. Darren's doing a good job in that position. We're seeing results from that through hazard mitigation and all that other stuff. To have that switched over into somebody, I think when Darren decides to retire or he leaves the county, then that's when we should evaluate that position.
So.
And I would put it at that. Even if that ambulance goes, he doesn't need to be ambulance director either right now. He could choose what he wants to do.
So Supervisor Severson, do you want to talk about what you talked with me about, or?
I guess, I don't have any problem either way, because I'm not, I've never approached this as trying to hold anything hostage, and we have to do what we can to make ends meet. In the emergency management position, we've cut it, the sheriff's department has, 2017, we cut the half-time position, it just came down to me, and then we worked out a contract with John, so we're getting the bare minimum, requirements done. with a, you know, a very slim budget. I broke the numbers down for you, and when it comes down to, we've only got like $2,400 for operational costs. You know, I mean, I think we're doing the best we can with that. So in regards to positions, if you wanna move it to the sheriff's department, I think the only way that it makes sense for Clay is if it is a sworn deputy. So that he has the ability to move that person around. Keep in mind, this is what every county board that has ever discussed, this is where they get trapped. Is, well, we'll throw them in as a jail administrator, we'll throw them in over here. And I think it's because not very many people understand what emergency management really does. And if you take 16, 17, and 18, 3 years back-to-back flooding, if you wanted to do the job correctly and serve the citizens appropriately, you wouldn't have had your deputy. Because that person was in the office working on recovery and mitigation, 50 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, solid. And I could shift things around so that ambulance stuff was being covered and I could focus on emergency management. You won't have that flexibility. The other thing, I guess, is, whatever change is made, I don't know how to say this really, Melissa. I guess everybody gets an opportunity to decide what they want to do. And I think someday that this position will split. I think that EMS is growing and
I agree with that too.
And the level of care we're dividing is increasing. And as that moves up, it will take more time. If we ever get to the medic level, that's gonna take even more oversight by a manager. So.
Can you repeat that? If we ever get to what?
What's that?
If we ever get to what?
To the paramedic level.
Paramedic.
Yeah, because there's more requirements under DEA and other things. So, if this gets switched around, I think that it is important to know that the Joint Ambulance Committee would have the right to repost the position. And I would have an opportunity to then decide what I want to do, stay or go.
Which I think when we were talking about this, that was where in listening to you talk, I felt like that in 2026 or 27, whenever I proposed this, it was it truly could happen that you would no longer be in the that you would choose to do something different. I think the comment you made to me is, in a few years, I may choose to be doing something different.
Right, yeah, and I don't mean that I don't want that to be taken away, anybody. I'm not trying to, I am getting closer, to that. And, I've been in this since 98. No, 7, you were 6. I came in just after, so since 1997. So, I don't know. I don't know that I wouldn't consider me moving if it goes to the sheriff's department. Because I don't think that serves the sheriff's department. I think you need the flexibility. You need to be able to say, this week, I'm gonna have you work 2 shifts on the road, 3 shifts in emergency management, but I need you to cover something else. And if I'm not a sworn deputy, gone through the academy certified, you don't have that flexibility and you're gonna need that. So that's not really fair to the sheriff's department. If you move it under the sheriff's department, all you're doing is taking a shell game and you're moving it from EMS and moving it over here. So I don't know where you really save the money, other than you wouldn't have the salary, wouldn't be as much. So there would be some savings there for sure. And maybe, there'd be a way to massage the workload and things like that. There is one county in our region that does do it that way, and that's Lafayette. Again, a poorer county, a rural county, a smaller tax base. And I think she's a lieutenant, so she works the road, she works emergency management. Anywhere else that's under the sheriff's department, it's their own. And then they fill in opposite of that. So I guess it would be, the couple things to consider is the contract with the municipalities for the ambulance runs through December 31st, 2025. When would you consider making this change? Would it be
I think I put
26?
I can't remember now. Here.
Same time, I think you'd almost have
2026.
Okay.
you'd almost have to repost the position for the sheriff's department too, because people are going into law enforcement
Right.
They're not really looking.
No, I mean, all of these things were under consideration as
And
issues that would have to be figured out.
one of the biggest issues I'm seeing, and I have very smart and capable people, but they don't have the experience and the knowledge base that Darren has, and it would be, as capable as they are, it would be one hell of a learning curve for them.
I agree.
If it is something you want to do, if it's gonna be a deputy, we don't do this in this county, and I think we should, is have that person job shadow. You know, I mean, give them some time, if this change is gonna be made at that time frame.
Well, and the other question becomes is if this position becomes a standalone position where there isn't the ambulance attached to it, then we're trying to hire a part-time person, which always becomes a challenge.
It does. Now, you have the contract dollars that are used for John's position. If you hired somebody that had a background in chemistry and engineering,
Then you can make it a more full-time.
you might be able to swing it so that on its own, it's like 32 hours a week. And you'd be able to put those funds back towards that, because they'd be eligible. So I haven't crunched that number. That's something I could do. So standalone, I mean, there'd be some benefits if the person was under the sheriff's department just for support staff, for whatever support staff might still be left, but.
All right, so I guess coming full circle then, do we want to eliminate that entire section that suggests that we transfer the position to the sheriff's department?
I agree to that.
I would agree.
So just delete it. Okay, so now we're back to making no cuts in the emergency management department unless we were to not give our director raises, which I don't think, well, I guess I'd like to hear from you. Does anyone think that's a good idea?
No.
Oh, I don't.
Okay.
Bad idea.
I agree. I just want to make sure. I don't want to make statements for everybody. So then the question becomes, are we going to make the same statement that we don't want to put it on the referendum? That they're already, it's a statutory position and it's already operating at a minimal level?
Yes, it's already operating at a bare minimum.
Yeah, and not only that, if you put it on the referendum, the public's gonna look at, what the heck is this? A lot of the public don't even know that this position exists until there's an emergency. And so,
And even then, they probably don't realize who's taking care of all their problems.
right. And put it on the referendum.
We've solved all of them, but we should try.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're doing the FEMA work, which is complicated and no
To
fun.
put it on the referendum, the public isn't going to consider,
Important, or they may not consider it important.
yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I'm deleting that entire section and just saying $14,000 is just, we're gonna have to come up with it. It has to stay in the budget as it is. Okay, family court commissioner, same conversation. It's a required position, runs at the bare minimum. If we were to, the only thing really to reduce would be her salary. And if we were to reduce it by the amount listed, she would be getting paid what she was paid in 1997. To me, that was
That's enough.
same conversation. I don't know how we could reduce that tiny little budget by that much. Anyone else have any disagreement with that?
Bob, I agree with you. It's again, statutory requirement, minimum operating.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't understand why we're having these conversations on these departments that are statutorily required and are basically running on salary only budgets. I just don't see
I mean, it was only
Sense.
because I split it out evenly. I mean, I could have just totally ignored it and dumped it all into the sheriff's
well,
department.
you can go back and say,
But-
we had the discussion.
Right, but at least this way I feel like we've, completely beat this to death.
But one thing with the sheriff's department, that could be put on the referendum, because you can tell people that you're going, if you don't pass this referendum, you're gonna jeopardize the safety of every
I
county.
know, and that's a conversation we'll have at the end, because there's concerns with leveraging the deputies for the referendum too. So we'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to the sheriff's department. All right, so, local emergency planning committee, it's reducing it by $2,900. It's a bare bones budget.
I did find, it's not much, it's $210, but you can make a $210 cut one time.
What is it?
It's, the registration and lodging for the Wisconsin Emergency Management, conference. Just $210, but it's something. I'm really struggling with the whole asking taxpayers to shoulder more of a burden and not making something. And I appreciate all of you saying it's a bad idea not to include the raises, but I have a hard time looking at taxpayers and saying that I didn't do something, myself. But anyways, $210 is what I did come up with.
Okay, I'll put down $210.
But it just, you're only gonna save it 1 year.
Right, it's a one-time, yeah.
It's a one time.
All right,
And that's a 10% cut. If you think about
right?
the budget.
I mean.
I just
it's
whacked 10% off the
It's-
budget.
Because the total being asked to cut for that was $2,989.
How sad is that?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that one there. All right, so then we get to register and probate. So I think we talked about this quite a bit at the last meeting. I did add some more language to help people understand one thing that Ms. Lau actually has 3 titles. I think that we sometimes forget that she's also the judicial assistant and the juvenile clerk, on top of being the register and probate. So anyway, I mean, I think the paragraphs speak for themselves. I think that at our level, we just need to make sure that we are comfortable saying we do not want to cut her deputy, given that she started that position with no deputy and by the language in here. I mean, I don't want to read the whole thing. So, does anyone have any concerns with? Because there's no statutory requirement to provide her with a deputy. That's where it's vulnerable, is that there is no statutory requirement. Some, like the Register of Deeds, it says in the statutes that we shall provide a deputy. The chief deputy is statutorily required. So I think we need to be clear, and that's why I tried to add the language as to why this deputy is necessary. But it's not statutorily required, so we can't say that it's, the office is statutorily required, and I believe being a judicial assistant and the juvenile clerk are also in statute, that we must provide those services for the county.
And those are appointed by the judge.
Right, but we have to have them, right? We can't just say we don't want them anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's providing, she's wearing 3 hats, and in many counties, those are different positions. Is that accurate?
That is correct. So in some counties, it's 3 different positions. In smaller counties, they do, I know in Vernon County, they're combined as well. But they are seeking, they don't have a deputy right now, but they're seeking to fill that position. So, but in most counties, there are at least 2 people in that.
Fulfilling those roles.
Right.
Okay. So she did offer some cuts. There's the health insurance, and it isn't the full amount because
So in 2022, it looked like when they made, so our insurance is dropping a little bit, with the change in it.
right, yeah,
So, some of that is absorbed, that it wasn't fully calculated exactly what insurance, and then when she didn't take it at all, for 2022 or 23, we weren't sure, we were kind of leaving that as an option.
okay, so it was still in the budget. There was some money in the budget for insurance, and then she ended up not taking the insurance.
Right, so,
Okay.
yeah, so Devin did take it, and then since Veronica didn't take it for 3 years, no one took it, and so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they've been looking at attorney fees. I think she talked about that last time. So she thinks that there could be some reduction there and then reduction to conferences. So $7,159. So, I mean, I don't want to, so one of the things we could say is that if there, because once it gets past us, we don't know what's gonna happen, right? It's gotta go to finance, then it's gonna go to referendum. If that deputy position were to be put on the table as a cut, do we want to say as a committee that we think it would then go on the referendum?
I would say yes, it is the challenge question of what happens if the referendum doesn't make it or things don't change. But I think it's our first opportunity to say, this is the position is required, it's mandated, but the deputy isn't. And I think that's I don't know what other option we have.
Supervisor Turk or Severson, any thoughts?
This is Supervisor Turk. I'd be in line with Supervisor Frank. This would be a demonstrable reduction in service for a failed referendum.
So I'm gonna put language in here that if the deputy position were considered for elimination, the committee feels it should go on the referendum.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I gotta just write something around. Okay, all right. So that brings us to the sheriff's department. Lots to talk about here. So I think first let's talk about the non-salary things. They came up with, I think it's $132,000 in 2024. The one thing that did bring up was the $7,000 cut to training. We have a really young, although if we start cutting deputies, then maybe it's less of an issue, but, I don't know, I would be concerned about that. But does anyone have any other concerns about the cuts that they were proposing to make that are not in salaries?
So the $7,000 in training, is that just the deputies, or is that the entire jail dispatch deputies? Is that the entire department?
Entire department.
Okay, thank you.
But I mean, with that said, the entire department, both are very small training budgets to begin with. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, because I didn't even look at the jail staff. We also have the same young staff in our jail staff.
yes,
That's not any different when I think about all the interviews we've done for jailer dispatchers in the last 5 years since I've been on. Same thing with road patrol.
yeah,
I was looking at how many deputies were hired in 2021. It's like 6 of them,
yeah,
all on the road.
uh-huh.
It's a little sobering to think about. So, I mean, and that's why I have raised the concern of cutting training, because we owe it to them and to, and to us, just in good common sense that we should not be cutting that.
Yeah, I mean, we owe it to the taxpayers to have a well-trained department.
We want them to be able to respond appropriately,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's what's in the news all the time, is concerns, what people are concerned about. And we need to train them well so they know how to handle it, is my thought. But
Yeah, and so this again, so I agree. I'm hoping that from the jail dispatch side, that the grant process that the county, you guys have put in, will help offset and will help with some of that. But again, that's just the jail dispatch side for EMD, because you are right. Not only the citizens, anybody in the county that calls 911 or calls for services, should be offered that right, that ability to have those good responses.
So I put the language in here about the concerns of cutting the $7,000, but when I put it into the Excel spreadsheets, I left it in there as a cost. but I can certainly remove it, from the drop list.
So this is a one-time favor. So through that, Department of Justice COVID grant that took place, we bought how much money? Over $7,000 for students, right? That we won't have to buy this year. How's that looking?
So you could essentially cut cleaning supplies per year and save.
But it's, even if it's a surplus at the end of the year.
I mean, I'm counting that like the first. Because we're comparing to 2022, any change we make after 2022. Potentially, I mean, maybe they won't buy it. And by they, I mean the referendum. It's two of which members. Right, Carrie, Bob, are you on the referendum committee?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
You on the referendum committee?
Yeah, you broke up. I'm sorry. What was that again?
I was just asking if you were on the referendum committee with Supervisor Severson. I think both of you are.
And so is Supervisor Turk.
Okay, so here's the question for you guys. Because the resolution specifically asked us to make budgetary changes based on our 2022 budget, but then specify 2024 through 2027, what about cuts that we're making in 2023? Can we not count those when we're looking at, because it's a change from 2022, so it feels to me like it should count.
The wording to me implies that 22 is the baseline for comparison. Bob and Carrie, would you agree with that assessment?
I would concur. It's just getting a little difficult to hear though with the chairperson.
Yeah, Melissa, is
saying.
your mic on? We're not picking you up real well.
Making me use the owl, and I'm unhappy.
Okay, then we share your unhappiness. Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, I do want them to be able to hear, so what do we need to do, Barb?
He's bringing over the other owl. I think this one has to have an update.
Okay, they're gonna bring over another owl. Why can't we use the microphones?
Because I don't have the base. This is the old base for the old mics. This is not the base for those mics.
Oh. Okay. Bear with us for a little, I mean, we're gonna keep talking, but if you can't hear, don't be afraid to interrupt, and then we'll just plain wait for the new owl to show up.
You're coming in good right now. Just when you were talking there earlier, it just wasn't coming in very good. Distant. Sounded distant.
That's what was happening.
That's what was happening at the finance meeting. I couldn't hear hardly anything that was going on. It was very frustrating. Okay, so I'll rephrase the training stuff then, I guess, and we'll just say cleaning supplies are cut and I can get rid of that narrative about the training.
Well, I guess the issue I have is cleaning supplies are only cut for 1 year. So.
But the training, I was only counting we were only counting the training budget for 1
For a
year as
one-time
well.
cut, okay, yeah,
Just for 2024. Well, we have to maintain it going forward though.
yeah,
'Cause that is an issue.
yeah.
Well,
This isn't eliminating the training budget, it's just cutting it by 7,000, or was there only 7,000 in it?
For 2023, it was increased by, what was it, 2,000 for the road and 3,000 for the jail. So we're cutting the 5,000, we just increased it, plus an additional $2,000.
so what will it be going forward?
And I think the road was gonna be 7,000, I think it was gonna be 5,000, the jail was gonna stay at 3,000.
So we have 5,000 a year to train all of our road patrol deputies and 3,000. Does this include them going to school? And all of that?
Like,
The academy.
the academy,
Yeah.
that's reimbursed by the state.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's good.
Yeah, that doesn't include that, but I mean,
Doesn't take long to use $3,000 up,
no,
especially with all new employees that never had half the training they should have.
And how much will that simulator help us alleviate some of this?
I think that, I mean, that'll help, that'll give us another option for use of force training, but
There's some required training that you can't fulfill by using the
You see that
simulator.
simulator? Just so the committee's aware, the $67,000 that they got in grant money that we approved last month bought some pretty amazing virtual reality training software. I would highly recommend checking it out. It's very, very immersive. I will say that.
Yeah.
Feels like you're really there. And hopefully that will help with, with quite a bit, but it can't replace all of it.
Yeah, it will, but I guess what I would wanna say about that is that's gonna help us modernize and increase the amount of use of force training we're doing. But there's so many specialized trainings that we could be sending people to or should be sending people to, and that's where these training dollars
Right.
pick up.
It helps our staff get to the 24-hour required
Yeah,
training hours, what this will help us do, but it doesn't help with these specialized trainings.
So do we just take the $7,000 out? And just say we're not cutting training?
What's
I'm
it?
not in favor of cutting any training, but that's just because of what's going on in society today. We need the training. And I think we're doing a disservice if we don't have it.
Right, I think it puts not only the deputies at risk, but it does put the county at risk too. In my mind, I care more about the deputies themselves and making sure that they are fully trained and able to do their jobs safely and well. But also it does open up us as in the county to liability if they don't do it well.
I've got one question that really doesn't apply to this. This virtual reality trainer, how many counties have that?
We're one of the only ones.
Is there a possibility that we could become a training center
We have talked
for
about
other
that.
counties?
Yeah.
We had talked about that.
there is that potential that we could use that, offer it out to other other counties for training for a fee.
I mean, especially local counties like Vernon,
Yeah.
Crawford.
The other thing too, to go along, so and I've probably said this before in a meeting, I teach at Southwest Tech. The one thing we could do is we could advertise through Southwest Tech to try and bring more students in for it. It is portable, we could take it, we could transport it to a place to run a training as well. So,
So that's a potential for
it is, yeah,
additional revenue.
Revenue.
Probably not a lot.
yeah, cause you'll have man hours factored into that, taken somewhere, but
Will be enough to cover the training budget?
I would hate to say yes or no to that right now.
We have no
with-
idea.
Without exploring that a little further, yeah. I think we'd have to run a few trainings first and figure out what the appetite for cost would be for that.
Darren's got a question.
Yeah.
But just, I know that we don't need more to think about during this, but that the whole hearing, that, losing a deputy, that conversation can kind of be disturbing, but if I'm working for the sheriff's department and then I get wind that you just cut my training budget, that's an investment into me as an employee. It helps me do my job. That message now gets sent, well, yeah, it's tough times, but you just, you're divesting in me.
Right.
You lose that person. Every time we have to hire, it costs us money. We don't talk about it, but it costs us money. Costs us more money than what we're probably talking about in the cut. But again, I know business has to change.
And
I just hate to hear that.
to answer your earlier question, Darren, how much does it cost to train a deputy? I don't know the exact dollar amount to that, but to a baseline, so DOJ reimburses us for the academy. A lot of the baseline trainings are either free or pretty cheap. But then you factor in wages and salaries, and they're in field training for 12 weeks.
Dedicated time for somebody, the
which is-
FTO, which is taken away from other, that's a cost.
Yeah, and so It's a considerable cost to train a deputy, it is. And
Deputy Rupp now come up with a sheet that showed what it costed us. I don't know. Do you remember that at all, Melissa?
I have a
This is
vague
Back
recollection.
when Sheriff Bindle was around and Chief Deputy Knable.
Yeah, I do remember that. I don't remember what the dollar amount was though.
Can't remember what year that was.
All right, so I'm gonna propose that we stick with the language that's in the paragraph that says we do not recommend the $7,000 cut to training, and I will change the Excel spreadsheet to remove that $7,000. Is that what I'm hearing everyone
Yeah.
would like?
Yes.
So this is Bob. The jail is a statutory requirement, correct?
Yes.
So are we back to that comment of, we're not cutting this because at least on the jail side, it is a statutory requirement. Why are we cutting something that is a requirement that we also have a state jail inspector looking at it and validating what we're doing? I think, do we want to go down that background for the comment? And I guess I'm throwing that out to the committee.
Oh, you mean add additional language?
Yes, adding that on, because the part of that budget is, it's required that they have 24 hours of training. The jailers are required for that per statute. We have to have a jail. We're trying to put those connections together, and then we will deal with the deputies in another sentence.
So is that true? Both the jailers and the road patrol deputies have to have 24 hours?
Yes.
Okay, I can add that language.
Yes,
24
yeah.
hours each year.
24 a year.
Required. Training.
And half of that has to be actual in-person class training.
They waived that during COVID, but
Half,
it's back.
so 12 hours of in-person.
Okay.
Required. Okay, I will add that. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna delete the 7,000 from the spreadsheet. I had already put this language in, but I hadn't deleted it from there, so I will do that. Does anyone have any concerns about any of the other cuts? I mean, the other ones aren't great, but I felt like I could deal with it, I guess.
I guess
Go ahead.
my concern, the administrative assistant position, so I want to talk about that.
Oh, yeah, we're for sure gonna talk about that.
Okay, I guess we're not talking about positions right now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
No, we're for sure gonna talk about that.
yeah.
Okay, any other comments on the non-staff cuts? All right, do you want to change the owl? Is it working, you guys? Look, I'm shouting, I am shouting.
It sounds pretty good on my end.
We can just leave this one here, and if we need to, we can change.
Okay, all right, we're gonna keep going, but definitely let us know if you can't hear. Sorry to everyone in the room that I'm shouting at, okay. Okay, so originally the sheriff sent me, what the department sent was that the administrative assistant position wouldn't be cut until 2025. And I took the liberty of changing that only because I felt like we were gonna hold pretty firm on not cutting any other positions in that department, and therefore felt like we should cut it right away. I don't necessarily, that's not something I want to do, but that was my rationale for making that cut sooner than what they had proposed. So do you want to comment then on what you're?
Well, yeah, and Sue's here and probably would like to comment as well. So we looked at that, we looked at dictation software, and I will say that the typing our reports is a big part of her day-to-day. But it's also just one of her tasks. So and to go into detail on that, without her position, so Sue's kind of our eyes and ears on our reports getting done in a timely fashion. Are they getting to the district attorney in a timely fashion?
I'd like to talk about
And, so if somebody's not getting their stuff done, she's the first one to see that and catch it. She is the face when people come to the door. Amber, I don't know if everybody's aware where Amber's office is at. It's kind of back towards mine. But she's the first person to greet people who come to the door, help them, usually can help get what they need or help them without Amber having to take care of it. And, it's gonna not only increase Amber's workload if she's not there, but the deputies' workload as well, cause how do I wanna say this? She doesn't change the reports, but she cleans them up. So they're ready to go when the DA needs them. Now, they're gonna have to take the extra time to do that themselves. In the screening thing, the sergeants are gonna have to take more time to make sure that things are getting done. It's gonna be more staff intensive for everybody else to not have that position. So I want that to be clear. Like, if we're looking at this for a cut, we're creating more staff time, more work time for other people. Everybody else.
Right.
So
when you originally proposed it for 2025, what was your thoughts?
We had to the resolution was that we need to eliminate so much money from our budget.
Right.
And, the first year, we already cut 4 deputies, and obviously there needed to be cut someplace. If we're cutting deputies, we need to cut, it's just gonna be staffing levels that we need to be cut. We couldn't keep cutting only deputies, and we had no deputies that work at the same time. Do we want to cut the position? No. Do we want to cut any of our deputies' positions? No. Our staffing levels already look so low.
Right, so that brings me to the conversation, the really hard conversation, which is, if we are gonna stand strong, saying we are not cutting any deputies or jail positions, do we want to also say then we will not cut the administrative position either? And this is horrible for you. I deeply apologize, but, I would be interested to hear from the committee your thoughts on this, and I will be happy to change it to something different. But we do have to consider, if we're making the statement that we are going to recommend no jailers and no deputies being cut, are we okay with also saying that we're not cutting the administrative position? Please, someone say something. Can I say something? Can I hear from my committee first?
Oh, I'm sorry. When someone says, can I hear you talk? You're not the first one in.
I'll start with Supervisor Renish, Keith in the room.
I'm gonna bring it up again. I don't wanna see anybody, our manpower is minimum right now. We're 1.33. Why are we having that discussion? But as a business owner, there was times when I always looked back, if you point a finger, there's 3 pointing back at you. I would look at, as a private businessman, where can I cut? Well, if you see a semi trailer sitting there that only gets used once a week, you've got license, insurance, upkeep, fuel. Semi can go, let's call it a non-breathing entity. So I'm still to the point, I know you're gonna throw back that it's proven it's more safe, but squads are very expensive. We can only get 2 out of the 3 now because they went up so much. I'm looking at going back to the days of the bare minimum of squads here to cover our crew that's working and people drive to work. Have we explored the option of what that could save? And I'm talking tires, insurance, maintenance. There's a lot of fees that are built in there that we could make go away. I know it's convenient that they drive them home, but I would rather see that go away than to see Sue or anybody else go away.
So our squads are purchased off of capital, but you're right, maintenance of those squads is still in our
There's
operational
forever
budget.
fees involved when that squad sits here.
Right, insurance is on there and all of that is on.
We could probably get documentation to show that it's actually cost savings to the county to have take-home squads. If you go throughout the whole state of Wisconsin, there's very few departments that don't have take-home squads because it's been proven that it saves money.
once you hit a certain size of the department, square miles area, I guess, is probably more not size of department, but once you hit a certain square miles, it's, and yeah, I think the thing is the cost difference, what we increased for squads, it wasn't significant from what we were at before. And so you're buying more tires, you're buying more, but are you really? Because you're putting less miles on those tires. You get what I'm saying?
You're still covering the same mileage.
You're still covering,
Right, you don't buy as many tires in a year because the squad isn't going as many miles
You're not driving,
as it was previously.
the cars I can use 3 shifts a day, like.
Running 24 hours a day.
24 hours, which is
Which means you're doing an oil change every week,
doing oil changes pretty much every week. You're,
Yeah.
so now you're doing oil changes once a month.
and then you're replacing cars instead of, like right now with take-home squads, we're looking at what, a 5-6 year turnaround?
yeah, it's
Gonna be
goal is 6 years.
every 2 years, you're gonna be turning around the squad for sure.
But I think the point that he's making is what's more important to you, you know, having all of those squads or keeping a position. I mean, we have to make some choices.
That's the point I'm making,
Right.
ultimately.
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
I don't want to lose any staff.
And I don't either, and so to say that I'm gonna dig in on squad cars and say, yep, we have to have these, we do have to have them, but, you know,
I just don't think.
I struggle with answering that, I don't know that, I think at this point in the game, I don't know that it's saving you anything, cause if we turn around and sell them, we're selling them at pennies on the dollar, and.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, I understand it's a business expense.
I have a question. I'm a little confused here. I thought we're talking about cuts, but I thought we were looking at what should go on the referendum.
No,
No, we're not.
so, but well, both.
Both at the same
So
time.
both, yeah, so we've been tasked with determining what cuts we'd have to make to meet the dollar amounts that were stated in the resolution. And then secondary was with those cuts, if we had to make those cuts, do we want that to appear in the referendum? Or would we just say that, no, we can't make those cuts, or what statement do we want to make? So there's 2 questions. Both of them have to be answered.
And I'll go on the record now, I didn't say it earlier, but I'm against any kind of cuts of training, because I would have a hard time living myself if one of our deputies had to go to jail for 10 years because he was not trained properly, like we see in the news all the time,
I agree.
which just makes my blood boil. So, just had to say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wrote what I wrote, because I agree completely. Supervisors Turk, Severson, or Frank, would you like to weigh in on the staff? The proposed
Yeah,
staff?
This is Bob. Don't like cuts to personnel. I think if we're gonna follow the same pattern though, we recommended the referendum position, for the family court. I don't think that's a deputy, but that's the assistant there. As much as I don't want to, I think I would make that same recommendation that the administrative assistant or the assistant position goes to a referendum question. I think we need to show we're trying. I don't like it. It's no fun. I don't know where else to go.
So we would recommend the cut, but then say that we think it should go on the referendum for potential funding, was what you said, right?
That's my 2 cents, yes.
Supervisor Severson or Turk?
But if that
I'm gonna say-
referendum fails and that position goes on there,
It's gonna have to be cut.
then are we cutting that position altogether?
That's unless there's other money, that's what would happen. Yep.
So then so if they do the typing and do the reports up, how is that going to affect the DA and prosecution with the people if that happens?
How does the dictation software work? What does that do?
I'm not familiar with, I've never used it before. But my understanding is that you talk and it types it into like a Word document.
It can type it right into Spellman too.
It could type it right into Spellman, yeah. So I haven't seen it work yet. I've watched a video, but it's, their sales video, so that's gonna look really, really good in their sales video.
Again, so this is Bob again. I understand that position does a ton more than that, and maybe there's a ton more than that. From the transcription side of it, I'm on my phone, I'm logged into the WebEx, and I'm seeing word for word popping up on my phone as you're saying it. I'm seeing very few errors in it. What you're saying is being transcribed right on my phone right now.
I think
So Supervisor Turk, and I would say that's pretty typical of my experience with automatic transcription in online meetings, whether it's Zoom, WebEx, or whatever. When you start getting into specialized language, sometimes that gets more problematic for the automation. And I would hope that if it's specifically geared for a law enforcement, that maybe they build some of that specialization in, but it's hard to say.
So, oh, go ahead.
So I guess I feel like I'm not doing Sue justice talking about what she does here, but my concern is, again, is gonna be the amount of staff time it's gonna take, because they're gonna have to go back and correct more of their reports. And I mean, it's gonna be staff intensive.
But again, if the choice is to protect the deputies from cutting one of them, or cutting 2 of them, or cutting 10 of them, then what is your thoughts? That they spend a little more time on reports, but we keep them? I'm sorry, I know I'm being really harsh, but
I know,
this is the conversation we have to have. I don't like it, just to be clear.
No, I know you don't like it. I don't like it. I don't even know why we're talking about this when we're already well understaffed. But
What if we put it on there and say we want it on the referendum?
Amber.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a person that works with Sue, I don't know, I think of Sue as the roots to the tree system. She is the base. She is way more of our records management person than I am. I have my civil process that I do, but Sue keeps that system clean. She keeps it up to date as well as she can. And if we don't have that position, I don't have that time to do that. There are gonna be things that fall through the cracks, and that'll become a snowball effect.
Right, because so what would let's talk about that for a second. What would the consequences be of a record being mishandled? Would you like to talk, please?
I
Feel free.
would. I have something written out, if I
Yeah.
can get through it. 'Cause I am very emotional with this.
It's understandable.
Yeah. But first I would like to say that, yeah, I'm very emotional. I have been an employee for the county for 31 years. I'd like to point out that a few things over 31 years. Can you hear me? Not only have I went without raises, reclassifications, been passed over many times, yet seeing other agencies, offices receiving them without warrant, but yet I'm still here. Why? Because I truly love my job. Simple, and I will say I work hard and I do a good job at it. Now, the reason for me speaking up today is now my job is on the chopping block due to budget issues from our past county board for management decisions. But yet, even now, I am still seeing other departments, offices getting increases and reclassifications. But again, you are looking to cut this position, which is a vital part of the department. And I will point out, the sheriff's department is not and never has been a revenue-making department. The sheriff's department serves the safety of the citizens of Richland County. I've been labeled as just a clerk typist for many years, finally getting it updated to what it actually is, which is an administrative assistant. Why? Because I don't just type reports, which I have been advised I'm going to be replaced by dictation software, which if anyone's tried to speak into your phone or talk to text, you can see how well that actually comes out. Now you're telling me it's coming out pretty good today. That's great. But have you ever listened to 15 different officers and try to make heads or tails? It makes a difference. So now the officers, instead of being out on the road doing their jobs, will be using their valuable time editing their reports, doing my job at double the salary instead of responding to calls. Not to say how timely things will get done for court, as many cases are very time sensitive, and if the DA doesn't have it timely and well done reports, many cases can get dismissed. I would like to invite any of you to come and spend a day with me in my office, and you will see, I don't just type reports, but I handle many other duties as well as pretty much oversee our entire records management system, keeping everything up to date. This position is not something that should be eliminated or can be taken over by the office manager, as she has many other duties that she has to handle. There are no offices in the courthouse that are able to function with just one person. There is not one office in this courthouse that has one person in it. Eliminating this position is going to ultimately cost the county more money in the long run. As again, you will be paying the officers to do part of my job at almost double the salary, while at the same time, they need to work overtime to get the job done. I feel you will be setting a precedence. Is this what other county employees have to look forward to after many dedicated service years? Are you just gonna keep cutting positions to balance the budget that will never actually be balanced on all the backs of the hardworking, dedicated employees? Finally, again, I'm asking you to please reconsider eliminating my position, not my position, the administrative position at this time, and give the department additional time to adjust and make needed changes, just as you have done with many other departments in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you elaborate a little further on the records that you handle? Like what would the consequences be of that not getting done in a timely, I mean, you said it wouldn't get to the DA, but do you handle any other like court documents as far, or evidentiary type of documents, things like that as well?
We're trying to get to where we're all computerized. So the plan has always been to start scanning in all the documents, evidence documents, things like that, so that everything is in the computer and we're not handling all this paperwork.
Do you track inventory in the evidence?
No, we have an evidence tech that does that. She comes in part-time. But if Jennifer doesn't have a good report or something to go into court with, things are gonna get thrown out. And what's that?
Yeah.
Yes, and Health and Human Services. If they don't get their reports on time, think of all the kids out there that maybe,
Right.
in jeopardy.
That situation.
So yes, I have to get the reports to Health and Human Services. I have to get them to the district attorney's office. I have to get them to outside offices or other departments, because we're doing agency assists for the police department, for Marathon County, for different counties that have us do, or Toby or whatever, do reports for them. And all the photographs that come in, and all the accident reports that come in. And I spent the last day going back and reviewing this last year's reports and updating everything in our system. So everything is updated, getting after the officers. You have to get this done, you have to get this done. If somebody isn't there to ride them, they've got too many other things they're handling. They don't think, oh, yeah, I was assigned that complaint, I need to get that done. Because it's maybe a go nowhere complaint. They're focusing on the main ones, but everything has to be completed, or what good is the record? So I'm just asking for you to give the department a little longer, like you have with other departments. Give them a little bit longer to make these adjustments. But just cutting this position is gonna detriment to the department and the county.
Did you have a comment?
I do, but I think Jennifer will probably hit on it anyway, if she's eager to.
Maybe. So I want to take this out of Sue. Sue and I have been working together for 20 years, but that's not really what it's about.
No.
And you know that it's not about
It's not about
you,
me.
it's about this position.
Yes.
One thing that she does that I don't even know that she knows how important it is she deals with all the Freedom of Information records. If those don't get done, we get sued.
Mhm.
We get sued. So Sue might not know how important that is, but we know how important that is. And if that doesn't get done properly, we have a significant money problem. The other thing, one other thing is, man, we got to get our reports and we got to get them now. How many times do I call and say, dude, Where's the officer? Where's the stuff? Do you at least have a draft? I get draft reports because I gotta get them. And the reason I have to get them is because, for instance, I just looked one up. I've got a guy named Marcus Mason. He's in on, he's sitting in the jail on a possession of meth charge. He's a felony repeater. He's been to prison. He also picked up a weapons charge here too. He has a failure to appear out of Oregon. He has a governor's warrant out of Oregon. He travels to Tennessee. He has a home up in Michigan, and right now he's been hiding out in Minnesota. I've got him on a cash bond. He gets out of jail, he is in the wind. We've got someone with meth and with a weapon who now we don't have. How is the only possible way I can keep him in jail, keep him in here, keep a guy with a lot of meth and a weapon held accountable, is I gotta have the reports. Because if I don't have the reports, I can't take him to court, and the judge understandably says, he's out. You don't have any paperwork. We're not keeping someone in jail, even this guy, if you don't have the reports. So I've got a guy in on a sex assault. I gotta keep a child molester in jail, and I can't do it if I don't have the paperwork. So I gotta say, Susan rides the cops, right? And because everyone has vacation, they have this, they have that. Man, I need the paperwork, and everything is always time sensitive. And what happens if Susan, and then talking about a resource, what happens if the administration is gone? What happens, Amber, when I need time sensitive stuff? And my administrative assistant is not sitting at the front desk. Who am I talking to? Amber, I need this, I need it right now, I'm sorry, we gotta go, going up to court, I've got court in 3 minutes, I'm sorry, I need stuff. Like, I need the stuff. How often do I interrupt you, or my office interrupt you when we don't have our administrative person here? Stuff has gotta get done on a public safety way. So, I don't know how quickly we can adjust to that. Maybe we can adjust to it. My understanding previously was that we were gonna have maybe a year more before we were doing something with the administrative assistant. And now it's just like, what are we gonna do with all of this? So I'm simply talking about that. We wanted to talk about what the ripple effect was. And these are hard decisions to make. Very hard. Deputy, this, that. All these different things are very difficult, but we still have to make those decisions based on all the information we know. If we have all the information and we still have to say the administrative assistant has to go, sorry, you've been here for 30 years, Sue. Yep. But everyone's still got to know the information before you make the hard cuts. And I talked to you about this, so I'm not saying anything that you don't already know. But so I just wanted to speak to what the snowball effect is.
So can I just ask, are you recommending that we just move it back to 2025, or are you saying we have to take it, or would like to take it off completely?
I mean, I honestly, I would like to take it off completely, but to answer your earlier question, if it comes between cutting a deputy and cutting her position, I'm sorry, Sue. Yeah. I have to consider the safety of the county.
That's my question. You've got this broken down by year on who goes. Can we just keep it for the referendum's sake, more generic, saying that the sheriff's department will not name the position, but just say, we'll lose this position this year, this position this year. And then when that time comes up, then you can weigh the options, because things might change with the dictation or whatever. But to say that it would be the administrative assistant in 2024, just say we're gonna lose, what's the math here, 5 positions in 2024. And at that time, you can choose if we have to. If it doesn't, the referendum doesn't pass.
Same time that you want to put positions in the sheriff's department on the referendum if you don't actually plan on cutting them if the referendum doesn't go through.
So do we want to have that conversation right now? That's a whole other can of worms. So, okay, so everyone, I mean, if you want to just look at that chart, right? I mean, I think the table, pretty clearly lays out what.
Can I ask a quick question
Sure.
first? So I'm not completely up to date on everything, but from the documents I've seen, for example, Health and Human Service, you're saying a lot of people are cutting positions, but they're cutting positions that aren't filled by people.
So yes, it appears that they're cutting quite a bit, but these are positions that haven't been filled for how long? So shouldn't there be a surplus of money for that position that has been open for years at a time? So now it looks good to them on paper because they're cutting 6, 7 positions. But really, they're not cutting positions because people aren't there.
They're not cutting people. They're cutting the
Yes.
positions, but people haven't
Right,
been.
so it's different if Sue decides to, say she's planning to decide on retiring in 2025, like by choice. Why wouldn't you just consider that at that time that she decides to retire, if you're gonna fill that position or not? I was
That's
just
kind of
looking at,
what I'm saying, don't say that it's gonna be Sue in 2024, just say it's gonna be possibly 5 people. And then cover that, the time.
Well, I mean, I see what you're saying. On the other hand, I think it's important for people to understand, because if we just say 5 positions, the public may not understand what that means, and what they care about are the guys on, I mean, honestly, what I get calls about, I mean, literally right now, I get calls about, I haven't seen a deputy go down my road in a week. Like, seriously, I haven't seen a deputy run my road in like, and first of all, how do you know they haven't gone by when you weren't looking out the window? But that's another conversation. But I mean, as it is, we're getting calls about, I expect there to be a deputy just roaming around in my area on a regular
And
basis.
that's all the more reason to do what I'm saying is because, no offense to Sue, and you'll agree with what I'm gonna say, is that Joe Schmo that's gonna vote on this levy does not know her. But if you say you're only losing 5 potential deputies, now you got their attention. If you say they're gonna lose an administrative assistant,
Who cares?
the voters gonna go, yep, they're gonna be like, man, whatever, I just need I need a deputy out there.
And I'm technically a deputy as well, so it's,
I just don't think it's fair to the public to say, hey, if you don't vote to pass this referendum, we're gonna cut these 5 positions, and the referendum doesn't pass, and then we don't cut the positions.
No, that's, I 100% agree with that.
I just
I
don't
want to
think
be very careful that if we put out there that we are cutting, that if this referendum doesn't pass, we will be cutting 5 deputies.
Well, I think we have to.
We would have to cut those
We don't have
deputies,
the option of saying.
which is why,
If it doesn't pass, we say, well, we didn't really mean it. No, we're gonna have to cut 5.
I'm hesitant to put the deputies on the referendum at all. Like, I'm saying, we don't cut them and we don't put them on the referendum because we aren't going to cut them, is currently where
I'm saying, don't call it an administrative assistant, just 5 people from the sheriff's department. They will assume deputies or whatever, but don't list who it is for the referendum, that the sheriff's department will lose 5 people.
And then if it doesn't pass, we can deal with it at that time.
That's my point.
right, but we'd still be obligated to cut 5 people, and what I'm saying is, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think we should put sheriff's department personnel on the referendum at all, because if
Well, I
we
agree with that.
do.
If that's an option, I agree with that
I mean,
in the beginning.
Right, so the way I was thinking about this was, we submit this document and say, we aren't comfortable. We don't think we can make the cuts to the sheriff's department staffing. And we do not want to use, because I think the concern is that, we can use deputies as leverage to get the public to actually vote in favor of the referendum. But is that, if we don't truly intend to cut deputies, is that unethical?
Madam Chair? Can you hear me?
Steve, I can hear you. I wonder if they timed out.
Yeah, it looks like they might have frozen here on my iPad. I was just, ultimately, this committee's making recommendations back to Personnel and Finance. And Personnel and Finance has the ultimate authority for deciding what cuts will be proposed, what things will be on referendum. I think it's logical for us to say whatever cuts wind up being imposed in this area are going to have potentially catastrophic impacts on public safety. Whether that's deputies, support staff, or whatever it is, we've gotten pretty clear demonstration it's going to have a catastrophic impact. As officials who serve on whatever committees and on the full county board, we obviously have a duty to create the best public safety environment for our citizens as possible. And if that means we find a way to cut 2 deputies instead of 4 because these spending cuts are being imposed, I think that means we've done the best job we can for our citizens, not that we necessarily went back on a promise. And so, I want us to keep in mind that we're giving recommendations to finance and personnel, and we can say, all right, if we have to cut this much money, this is what that's going to look like. And I find it very distasteful what that's going to look like. I'm not hearing anybody in the room. Is anybody else?
I heard you. I heard you, Dave, but I'm not hearing anybody on the computer.
Let me walk.
This is Bob. I think we may have lost our connection to them.
Gentlemen, this is Clint. I'll walk down that way and see what's going on.
Hear them at least.
Hi now.
Hello, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
We heard you, Melissa. Can you hear us?
I'm gonna log out.
Barb says that we need to stand by that she can hear us. I'm the host right now. I think she's gonna log off.
Congratulations, Carrie.
An administrative position for the sheriff's department to administrative position in another department. And we're looking at this, is that being considered? I know you touched on that a little bit, Melissa. But I don't feel like that understanding is out there when we're comparing department to department.
So should they be able to hear me?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me online?
Yep, Cheryl said.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yep, we're back.
So Supervisor Turk, just want to let you know, we heard everything that you said, so that's good. You unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
But we've been holding our conversations until, so I did just get asked a question about, are we comparing cuts across departments when trying to make these decisions? And to answer your question, my understanding is that I know Supervisor Turk, you indicated that these are going to finance, but so far my experience with us reviewing these in finances, we have not been making any substantive changes to them, and have been passing the buck to the referendum committee. I mean, that's essentially what it feels like. But I do believe that the referendum committee, and you guys that are on that committee, I guess you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is there's a feeling that they will be sitting down with all of these proposals in one place. Because my argument on finances, I can't make a decision about cutting this position until I know what the big picture looks like. I don't know, I mean, I have to be able to rank how important all of these positions are, because otherwise it's
right.
To say, I don't need to cut, I'm not gonna cut her position because, but then if I'm also looking at cutting 3 deputies, then the choice changes. So I think the referendum committee's task, and please pipe in here, is to actually look at once everything is in, look at all the big picture, and then we're gonna have to go through some kind of ranking of priority services and then go from there.
So just to clarify.
You might be talking to the mic.
Yes. So to clarify, the referendum committee is being tasked with that, not the finance and personnel. Is that correct?
The referendum committee will make recommendations to the finance and personnel, which will ultimately bring those recommendations to the full board.
Got it.
And for this committee's sake, we've been asked to look at our specific area of influence for cuts, not look at anybody else's.
Just another, as this committee looks at cuts, this will be my 19th budget year of being told to flat 0 budget or cut budget, which I think all of us, anybody that's been here that long, that's what we've done. Is there anybody tasked with looking at the processes countywide Are we
Processing
looking,
for cutting or
not
processes
cutting,
for?
not cutting, I'm talking about, for instance, when I was in the private sector, we'd see shifting in business, so stores would stop buying, 6 packs of shampoo, they were buying cases of shampoo. We had all of these individuals up in the module selecting 6 packs of shampoo. So we recognized that and we would shift. We would cross-train and shift people over.
Streamline.
And so that we weren't heavy here and we weren't under here. We were following this process. So are we looking at that as a whole? Do we have departments, small departments, that you need some level of front-end support? But they don't need the same level of support that Sue provides to the sheriff's department, which I think is what Jenny's getting at, is if we have areas that have support staff that are able to answer phones, answer calls, direct things, and we have a department or two that needs that support, but maybe not on the same level, have we looked at migrating them into other areas? Have we looked at, are we still buying, every department's got its own contract for cleaning supplies and everything else? Have we looked at centralizing some of those things? I guess my question to go again is, I don't know that we have, or I haven't seen anyways, where we're looking at it as a process as a whole. We're operating in silos again. You go cut this and you go cut that. Well, every committee member, every department head is gonna have the same thing that you're hearing today. But I think we missed the boat on processes sometimes. Cutting isn't gonna get us anywhere, really, it hasn't.
Well, I think my only correction to that is I think everyone's budgets are bare bones. Like, we've already made all the cuts to any kind of non-personnel item that we can possibly make. And so I think that's why unfortunately, the conversation is now shifted to, are we overstaffed? And I think for the sheriff's department, when you look at the data that Sheriff Porter provided when we're comparing staffing levels, we are not in fact overstaffed in this department. So again, I come back to, I don't think we should be recommending that we put these cuts onto the referendum, because I think we need to stand firm in that they don't happen at all. On the other hand, I also am on finance, and I know that there's still $1 million gap out there that somehow we have to fill, and I don't know.
Now, that's $1 million gap in which year, 2024?
No, it's over the course of the,
1 million over that?
well, there is 1 year, I think, I don't remember the exact numbers. It's bigger in 2024. No, it's bigger in 2025, I think was the biggest gap year, because we ran out of ARPA funds to cover some of it.
Because one of the other things, and again, this is not meant to be like disrespectful to people that have put effort into this. But if we're looking at 2022 as the benchmark, and I could see like taking any ARPA funds out of there, but 2022 is the benchmark year. In 2022, Clay, how many deputies do you have?
In 2022,
Road patrol deputies?
it depends, 17 counting admin staff.
Okay, so we in 2022 are able to balance a budget with that staff, but the only way we can make the numbers work is go to 2027 with 4 deputies. Well,
it's because we are getting 1.1 million in ARPA funds to cover the gaps this year,
Goes away.
and
okay,
that's gonna go away.
so what about 2021? What's the thing that's caused us to jump that far to where we're saying that in
Right,
up
so.
to 2021, we could have 17 deputies, but now. in
So every
2027
budget year that I've been involved with, we've been taking money from Pine Valley as much as we can, probably some years more than there's been some years where it's been up to 500,000. We have taken money from the general fund, and that was where we ended up getting into trouble with our interest rates, or our rating going down, because we had lowered so we had been stealing for the last 10 years. We've been trying to take money from every little pot we could finally figure out. And all of those sources have essentially dried up, or, and we've decided we can't keep borrowing from our general, or taking from our general fund, you know, that should be our savings account, not our checkbook, right?
Right.
So, and I think it's a cumulative effect of all of those things. And the only reason why it didn't come to a head a couple of years ago is because miraculously COVID hit and we got money from the government to keep going. So it's a cumulative effect of many, many years of just trying to, you know, we're moving, you know, kicking the cans down the road and moving the shells around. And we've essentially run out of,
Mhm. And costs continue to increase as revenue stays flat.
yes,
Right,
and
so-
that's a huge part of it too. The state shared revenues have stayed flat and blah, blah, blah.
So I seen a graph somewhere where state revenue should be here, shared revenue, but it's down here. And both sides of the aisle, the state government are, you know, touting this massive surplus. Wouldn't it be easier to go to the taxpayers and say, shared revenue has dropped to this extent,
Right,
which has caused us to have to cut and cut and cut.
so
to
that
this extent.
conversation is, referendum committee people, you can confirm that's a big part of the conversation you've been having, correct?
Yeah, that is.
Yep.
So now
You've been talking about that.
ask you, the taxpayer, to bring us up to where shared revenue was at and leave that where that's at. I think doing anything else, you are what you're saying, what you mentioned, you're, whatever you put in there, public is gonna expect it to be gone. Whereas it's very simple to say shared revenue has decreased. With the shared revenue, we can make a balanced budget. Yes, or I mean, I
It
say that
wouldn't
not knowing
quite get us there, but it would be close.
it'd be closer.
Supervisor Turk, what is the total to 2027 that is it 3 million or something that we're trying to fill completely?
Yeah, it's 3 point some million. I don't remember the exact number, but yeah.
Yeah, the shared revenue is 1.2.
Yeah, if you looked at that particular chart that Darren was referencing, yeah, it's a little over $1 million difference from what we would expect it to be if it had been adjusted for inflation. So it's not the total answer, but it's a big chunk of it, is how we've been describing it.
It's about half, yeah. We're getting, I mean, we really need to keep moving on this because otherwise we're gonna be here all day, which is fine if we need to be here all day to figure this out, but.
Okay, but he said shared revenue's been going down, which I know.
Well, it's been
But
staying
the
flat.
mandates are being going up. The
Hmm?
state is mandating.
And again, we aren't gonna solve that here. I understand why we're talking about it, but that's a big portion of what the referendum committee is tackling, is how to address that particular issue. So we're back to, am I removing the administrative assistant position as a cut completely? Am I leaving it at 2024? Am I putting it at 2025? And the big question we need to answer and have, make some kind of statement on is, do we want to say that we do not recommend cutting any, we can meet the requirements that we were asked, but only by cutting deputies and jail dispatch? Are we gonna say that we do not recommend that any positions be cut because we are already understaffed as per the data we've provided? And that we do want them placed on the referendum. If they were going to be recommended cuts, we would absolutely want them. I mean, I guess if they're gonna make them as a recommended cut, we absolutely have to put them on the referendum because we don't want it to happen. But do we need to make any other statements about them being on the referendum?
Madam Chair, I would say, coming out of this committee anyway, that I would recommend the statement that we are currently understaffed and that we don't recommend any cuts.
So I'm gonna, just because this is recorded, I'm gonna very quickly just summarize so Sheriff Porter did some math. And so just to be clear, I did have the question. So currently, as we have it written, Richland County Sheriff has 1.4 officers per 1,000 people living in Richland County. There's a square mileage of 589 square miles in Richland County. The national average is 2.8 officers per 1,000. The regional average for the Midwest is 2.2, and Richland Center has 2.1. I was asked if when he calculated the county data, if he removed Richland Center's population from that because they have their own police force, and he confirmed that he did eliminates the Richland Center, so the 5,000 whatever people, I think it's really close to 5,000 people.
41, I believe.
Yeah, from the overall, and you use, and so the new numbers using 2021 or 2020 data, census data is actually 1.33.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm gonna correct that to 1.33. So 1 1/3 officers per 1,000 residents. I also included the information that in 2010, there was an open deputy position that has not been filled and has been left vacant since then. And can you tell me for purposes, since 2010, the overall call volume, is up 20%. OWI cases are up 147%, drug cases 260, emergency detention cases are 766% up. And I did leave in there that domestic cases remain consistent, but they haven't dropped, and crashes have also remained consistent, but have not dropped. What is the source of those percentages? I'm assuming you can look in Spillman or something.
Yes, that's,
Okay.
those are reports that are generated from Spillman.
Okay, I just want to make sure that because I think people will really want to we want to make sure that we can back up our statements with data, you know, that this data comes from, so reports generated from Spillman?
Yes, yeah.
So what is Spillman?
It's our record management software.
Spillman Records Management Software, okay. Okay.
No, this is Bob. The comment about the reports, and again, don't like cuts, but the report information is good and accurate because Sue has put that information in there so that we can pull the reports to have good, accurate information. So.
So I say reports generated by the administrative assistant position.
That's what I'm going at. That's what I'm trying to say. Yep, exactly. I think that should be.
Right. And then, of course, you get into, you know, starting immediately with any kind of cuts to the deputies. You know, we would have to cut back on responding to, you know, anything more than a critical emergency. And I listed all of the possible things. So Bob had added some of that language. Are you guys, do I need to change any of that? So I listed theft, trespassing, burglary, minor assaults, paper service, traffic grant programs, routine patrol, house checks, business checks, ambulance assists, criminal damage to property, disorderly conduct, parades, presence at local events, ball games, and many other non-life threatening issues would not be responded to until all critical emergencies are handled. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is accurate. I mean, I struggled with, when you ask what is that gonna look like? What is the effect of this gonna be? I struggle with, how do you explain the totality of that?
And we have to try,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
you have
it
to
probably
try.
are missing. It's
Yeah.
probably not complete. It probably
Yeah.
doesn't give a full picture of what services that people really expect. Like if someone is robbed, they want you to show up. And in fact, if it's not life threatening, if the burglar's not in the house, you won't be able to respond until you have time, which could be a day or two.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think about like all the good work you guys are doing in schools with the canine demos and the drug sniffs, and I didn't know how else to put that. Do I call it a drug sniff?
Yeah.
Dual non-law enforcement people know that just means the dog checks for drugs in
Yeah,
schools.
and I'll also say that the schools get funding for that if we do those in the schools.
So you get reimbursed or?
The school gets money
Oh,
for
the
it.
school gets
If you do
reimbursed.
2 a year, they get money for doing it.
Yeah.
But you guys don't get money.
We don't get money from it.
No, the school does though.
Right. Okay, so that's the road patrol deputy portion of this. And then we get into the whole other parts of if we're cutting jail staff. So I did contact, Clay contacted our jail inspector, and then I asked additional questions. Essentially, I was asking him for what are the statutes and what are the administrative code as far as the staff to inmate ratio. There are some minimum standards that are written in statute. You have to have a male and a female deputy on, or jailer dispatcher on, our deputies, but a jailer a male and a female has to be on at all times, one of each.
As long as you have to have somebody of the same sex.
Same, as long as there's females in the jail, which I assume that we almost always have at least one female in the jail.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, he couldn't, I thought that there was gonna be some set in writing standard, and there isn't. However, when the jail inspector, we had further conversations with the jail inspector, maybe you want to elaborate a little further, Clay, but he indicated that we already have minimal staffing in the jail. And if we were to make any cuts to those, it would be a red flag for his office and inspections would take on a whole different tone. If you want to.
That pretty well sums it up. And Bob can probably touch on this. When we converted a multi-purpose room, 2006, 2007 to a housing block. And
Oh, those are,
this one isn't working.
there we go.
There it was,
No.
okay.
All right. So in 2006, 2007, we converted a multi-purpose room in the jail, which was our only multi-purpose room, into a housing unit. Part of the agreement, agreed upon by the department and the county board was that we would maintain a minimum of 3-3-2 staffing, 3 day, 3 evening, 3 or 2 midnight on its staff. So it's not a state mandated thing, but it was agreed upon by the jail.
So there's an MOU somewhere that,
I'm
that's that.
not sure where that exists, and maybe Bob knows, from that time if there was something in writing. But from what Nathan has found us, that was an agreement. That
He
was
agreed
why,
to allow us to do it as long as we maintained those staffing levels.
Yeah.
And at our current levels, we are just barely meeting that requirement, correct?
we are at our levels, we are meeting that, yes. So,
Okay. Because he doesn't allow an exception for if there's vacation or something,
but
sickness.
he also, in talking
have
about
it swap in.
yesterday, we're already fudging it because we're counting a dispatcher.
As a jailer.
Probably shouldn't be counted as a jailer. We're counting them as a jailer. Cause their sole focus is fire, EMS, law enforcement.
How many,
In the phone.
do you know how many other counties have jail dispatch combined? Are we one of only?
We're one of very few. Florence County, does, I wanna say maybe like Buffalo or Trempealeau, somewhere up there, maybe one of them does, but we're very few. And again, he didn't miss a chance to say that we're the only jail in the state that doesn't have a jail
Oh my
administrator.
goodness.
He never misses that.
We can't even have that conversation right now.
I know.
Okay, so I feel very strongly, and please, you guys, I mean, you can override me, so you're gonna, that we can't put dispatch and jail positions on the cutting block because we will immediately be, and I think what would happen, and did he confirm this with you, is that if we were to cut staff in there, that we would immediately have to send our inmates to a different county, which would cost us a fortune.
He went as far to say that if we start cutting staff, he'll shut down E-Block and we won't be able to use it for housing.
Which means we would have to shift inmates to another county
Very
and
likely.
pay, which means we will save no money.
No.
Because it's way more expensive. At this point, it's way more expensive to house. Do you know what it costs us to house in another county per night, per day?
It depends. It's probably $55 to $65
Per inmate per
per
day,
inmate per day, yeah,
plus medical,
plus medical. Yep.
any medical that comes up.
Yeah.
So with that being said, let's have a discussion about the jail dispatch. So we're proposing, in order to meet to meet the cuts, which we actually do need to talk about that a little bit though, because, so as I said in my email, when the numbers that they had used to originally calculate the cost of the salary in 2024 for a deputy and the cost of it in 25, 26 were, I'm not sure exactly. Did you not include FICA and all that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the only reason that I realized that there was probably he was probably underestimating was because I had just gone through the process of estimating salaries for register and deeds, land and zoning. So anyway, we figured out that those values that they had originally calculated were lower. So when we put in the new numbers, that's when we need to have a conversation about how many deputies or jail dispatchers we would need to cut. So if you would open 05D Sheriff Cut Proposal 2024. That's where the first choice happens. So when we use the new numbers, I think they had something like 79,000 for a deputy and it's actually 90. And then the jail, it's 82 instead of, I don't remember what. So we could do 2 deputies instead of 3 and then also cut the jail dispatcher and we would meet our requirements that they've asked. Or we could cut the 3 deputies and not do any of the jail or dispatchers and also meet it. So my recommendation would be that we leave the 3 deputies on there. But well, I mean, yeah, or we put the jail one on there, but again, that we can't. It makes no sense to make a recommendation to cut a jail dispatcher when we know we're immediately gonna get in trouble with the jail inspector and end up having to have financial consequences from that, because then we're not saving money.
That's what I said earlier. We are at a point, obviously, after all this conversation, that we are at bare bones minimum. So our recommendation to the referendum committee and finance and personnel is that you're gonna have to find it somewhere else. We can't do anything from this committee.
I mean, that's where I'm at with
I'm
the
making that
staffing.
motion, I'm making that motion, it's not whatever.
Supervisors, Church, Severson, Frank. Thoughts?
I'll second Supervisor Renish's motion.
I mean, you're on the referendum committee. What do you think is gonna happen if everybody comes back with, we can't make any cuts? That's the only thing that I struggle with. Cause that's currently what's happening in many.
Pine Valley did it.
Right, they said they can't do what we asked, which was come up with 50%
They're
of,
making money.
right. They can't make more money to cover 50% of their debt.
Yeah, it's a revenue stream to the county.
It is a revenue stream to the county. I know, everything's complicated.
And we weren't asked to make, and we weren't asked to make cuts. We were asked to either increase
Revenue.
income. I prefer to call it income because I'm not a revenue generating department, but increase revenue or make cuts. So that's what we were really tasked to do.
Right, but we're, like, the sheriff's department is not really in a scenario where they have the opportunity to increase revenues.
Sure, just throwing it out there.
I mean, we're already charging inmates for things that we're allowed to charge them for, right? You know,
We look at the booking fees that we could start
and
charging.
booking fees, but again, that's gonna be a little, I mean, every penny helps, and I think we should pursue that and look at it. It's not gonna solve our $1 million problem, but I mean, I think we should be looking at all avenues, but anyone else have comments on, so, I mean, I guess I just need to know, because, I mean, we are gonna present to them that this is what would have to happen in order to meet these, and then we're gonna go on to say that we do not recommend doing this because these are positions that have to be maintained. So do we want to leave the language as it is with, or leave it with 2 deputies and a jail dispatcher, or 3 deputies for 2024?
So this is Bob. I guess I'm of the position that the jail is a statutory requirement. We have a jail administrator who has said we're at our minimum. And as far as the jail dispatch center goes, by statutory requirements, that's what we've got and that's what we need to maintain. I'm also gonna go back to the recommend. We don't let the deputies go. I'm very, very challenged and I hate the decision of the administrative position as a referendum question. I hate it, but I don't know what else to offer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the road, like I said last time, just to remind everyone, the county board does have the full authority to dictate how many deputies there are, except for the chief deputy. That's by statute, the sheriff's.
Yeah, deputies and positions. It's not just deputies, it's total positions in the department.
Other than the chief deputy position.
Correct, absolutely correct.
Yeah, so, but the jail dispatch, it is dictated by our jail inspector and the state. What is it? Corrections code, whatever.
Department of Corrections.
Department of Corrections,
DOC 350.
administrative, yeah, DOC 350. So, so what I'm hearing is we potentially want to just say that we will cut 3 road patrol in year 2024 and not the jail dispatch position is what the proposal, knowing that we're going to say what, don't do it. Somebody.
Madam Chair, I think we're agonizing over trying to find the right answer when there isn't a right answer.
True, absolutely true.
So in view of that, perhaps we just need to give an answer and move forward.
Okay, so would someone like to pick, or do you want me to pick?
Can it be as simple as just trying to cover operational costs?
I don't think, no, I think we have to specify, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna say we don't cut the jailer. I think we just stick with the 3 road patrol. Unless
I
someone
would
has,
think that's a fair representation of what it would have to look like if it's going to happen.
right, because they could decide they want to put these deputies on the referendum and it's not, well, I guess it would make sense because if we want to put a jailer on the referendum, we have to have that position. But then what if it fails? Then we have to cut it. So we can't put it on there.
No, we can't.
So we can't put it on
That's what I
there.
was gonna say.
Yeah.
We're statutorily at our minimum now, so jail dispatches is out of the picture.
All right, okay, so I'm gonna go with option 2. And we're gonna move on. So let's look at 2025 then. Oh, and then did we make a decision? What am I doing with the administrative assistant position in 2024? I'm gonna put it in 2024 on the referendum question, or I'm gonna move it to 2025 and put it on the referendum question. I don't think it matters one way or the other. We just been asked to make this cut over between 2024 and 2027, so we can move it to 2020. I have it in 2024, but I mean, I guess if we're putting it on as a referendum question, we might as well put it in 2024 then, because then if the referendum passes, it's funded. Well, either way, it's gonna be on the referendum
So
though.
so if it's on the referendum question and the referendum fails, does
Then it
everything
would,
that's on there get cut?
Then my position covers
it would be. So maybe we should propose it to 2025, because then it would at least give us till 2025 to actually make the change.
I think it's a necessary. I think it's necessary to the functioning of the sheriff's department. I don't think it should be considered.
Just remove it completely.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
And I'm still against saying, putting titles on what will be removed. Then we're gonna lack the pun, pardon the pun, we're handcuffing the sheriff. You know, let him, and when push comes to shove and he has to make a decision, he can make an informed decision at that time. And we can't do that right now.
Right, the only issue is we have to have a monetary value assigned, and so without knowing the position, it's hard to know what the monetary value is.
I understand that, but I'm adamantly against. We can, I mean, we're guessing a lot of this stuff anyway, so we're
Right.
just say,
Well, for purposes of us, we can use this internal knowledge as to this is how we could potentially meet the requirement, but then when we go to make the statement in the narrative document, I could simply change it to 3 positions and not define them, is what you're
exactly,
saying.
I'm adamantly
So
against
we'll
defining
use-
the by title position because we don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, let alone 2 years from now.
Yeah,
Yes.
to say we're gonna cut.
Do you guys have any problem with not defining?
I guess I don't have a problem with not defining,
I don't know,
my issue is, to your point is how do you put a correct dollar amount on it?
Right. Well,
the other issue you gotta come to, I mean, our deputies know about these cuts, you start talking about cutting positions in general.
We may not have to make
There's
the
lots of
cuts.
departments that are hiring deputies, if they know that there's gonna be positions available that they can keep their job for the next 20 years compared to Richland County, well, that's up in the air, if we had to cut 10 positions, why don't I leave now and get my seniority started in a different department?
right, I mean, that's why I think it's important for us to determine. Are we gonna say that if this should not be on the referendum because these positions have to just be kept? And it's not the question of for a referendum, these are part of a core function that these positions need to be maintained regardless of what happens with the referendum. Is that the statement we're making?
I think that is the statement. It's easy for me to say that as the sheriff, but I think that's the statement. That these are core to our function and we can't go without them.
And our comparables would say that we're lower staffed than all of our.
I mean, I
comparable
think that
counties.
that's the saving, because we can show the data of how understaffed we currently are. That gives us more strength in our argument.
And then not only the fact that we're understaffed.
You're not using your mic. They can't hear you.
Not only the fact that we're understaffed, that could be a referendum point too. That if we're gonna be at full staffing, we need this extra money.
Oofta. I don't know if I can,
I don't
I
think
don't think I can do that one.
That's not part of the question we've been asked to respond to at this moment.
I mean, I don't disagree with the statement and the sentiment,
Mhm.
but, okay, so I still need, I'll change the language in the, to staff, I mean, I'll change it to staff, but I still think we need to be honest about the fact that we really can't cut jailer dispatchers, so it really essentially is deputies or administrative, I guess. I mean, what is it, the lieutenant would be the, because that's the only other administrative one that isn't statutorily required.
Yeah.
Well, the investigator, I guess,
Yeah, I mean, and that's just
but we're
a,
getting, that's what we've been talking about the last year.
and that would be a
This is where we
correction,
are.
that would be a correction that I would probably want to make, in your spreadsheet of where positions are leaving, is we're probably cutting that. We're not gonna have time for investigations when you cut.
Oh, so we would, so it'd be 2 sergeants in road patrol by 2027 and 0 in investigator.
Yeah, because I
We
mean,
can change that now.
before we hit 2027, that investigator is not gonna be doing investigations anymore. That's probably gonna happen in 2024. We're gonna be paying him to be an investigator who does patrol work.
So you're saying that I shouldn't even include this chart. I just felt like this chart was very powerful and then it really like lays it out there. But
I mean, it's a good reference for now, but what I foresee happening has already happened. The sheriff has already changed his mind on the investigator.
right,
So I just say, I would just phrase it that these number of positions have to be cut. Less jail dispatch. We can't touch jail dispatch, so we would have to cut this many positions in the sheriff's department, less jail dispatch.
okay. Because the way I currently have this listed, I do list, well, I list salary amounts. I mean, I guess I could say that 5 positions would be cut and just. I don't know.
I wouldn't try being so specific, but just say 5 positions cut.
Yeah, it's an estimated savings. We don't know what the pay raises are gonna be in those time frames. We don't know what health insurance costs are gonna be. All we can do is give an estimate of what we think it's gonna be.
Okay. So just to round, so that I know what I'm doing here.
You could use that word, 5 positions at an estimated savings of, don't give exact numbers.
Salary
but-
numbers, okay. That's fine, I can do that. And then what do I want to say about? So right now, I have a very simple statement that says, it is the recommendation of the Public Safety Committee that Richland County cut the administrative assistant position in 2024, but not cut any deputy or jail dispatcher positions from 24 to 27. So I'm assuming I'm deleting the part about cutting the administrative assistant position and just saying that we not cut any deputy or jail dispatcher position from 24 to 27. And then I should go on to say what? I mean, I feel like I should give maybe a little more reasoning. I mean, so we had said something to the effect of, as indicated above by the data, right? As we're already by above data. The Richland County Sheriff's Department is already operating at minimal staffing levels, right? Or understaffed is already operating, or is already understaffed.
By statute
Understaffed
or according to statute.
for the jail part, not the deputy part.
Right.
It's already understaffed.
You can say understaffed providing core services.
And therefore, we do not feel these positions can be placed on the referendum because they should not be.
You cannot recommend this.
Yeah, we cannot recommend these cuts.
Not recommend these positions be eliminated. Eliminated and placed on the, well, let's see, these positions be placed on the referendum. And I'll go back and make this sound better, but, we cannot recommend these positions be placed on the referendum because we would be unable to actually cut them if the referendum fails.
It'd be unethical
Yeah.
to put them on the referendum if it fails.
If it were to fail, we would not actually make these cuts. Is that what we're trying to say?
I think so, yeah. It's,
Yes, people online? I mean, I'll go back, it's not, I mean, I've just been writing bits and pieces of what we've been talking about, but essentially what I'm saying is, it is the recommendation of the Public Safety Committee that Richland County not cut any deputy or jailer dispatcher positions from 2024 to 27. As indicated by the data above, Richland County Sheriff's Department is already understaffed and providing core services, and therefore we cannot recommend these positions be placed on the referendum because it would be unethical to put them on there. If it were to fail, we would not actually be able to cut those. And obviously I will make that sound way better, but did I capture it all in my scribbles?
Yes, Bob, I agree. That's good.
Supervisors Severson, thoughts?
I'm fine with that.
Yep.
Okay. So is the committee comfortable with me making the changes that we have said here? And I will send it all to you, but we will not be able to discuss it amongst ourselves. We will have to wait until, so I guess what I'll do is I will submit what I'm gonna submit to them, to the finance committee, I will submit to all of you. And if you see any issues with it, you'll have to bring them to finance to correct it, because we won't be, it would violate open meetings laws if we were to muck around with it offline. So what I did the last time to come up with this document is I watched the last meeting to make sure I captured what everyone said. So I'll do the same thing now. Barb, how soon will this video be up? Will it be up this weekend?
I can try, but I
Or
won't
can
make
you-
that promise.
Can you send it to me? And is it,
I can send you the link.
can you send me because then I can look at it, because I need to have this in. I mean, I told them I would have it in today, but I'm thinking there's enough changes that I need to fix that I will get it done, this weekend, and I will get it to them on Monday morning. So if we're comfortable with that, that's what I will do. Is there anything else we need to discuss about this document? We beat this horse to death.
I have one question. If there is,
Here, you can have this one. if you want.
sure, if there's additional information, I just got additional information while we were at this meeting, how do I provide that? To you? Do I just send it as an addendum?
Yeah, so the department heads are allowed to talk to me all they want. It's
Yeah.
only the committee members that can't.
Yeah.
So what I would say is, so what I would say is that, if you have additional information that you think will help, I will go ahead and add that to the document, which I will then point out to the committee members. And if they have any concerns or questions about that additional data, they can bring it to finance.
Great.
Does that seem reasonable for everybody? Okay, so I think I need a motion to say that we are, I mean, I guess the motion's gonna have to be that we are in favor of this as presented with the modifications that we've talked about in the meeting today.
I would make a motion that the chair be authorized to type up the referendum recommendation as amended at this meeting.
I will second that motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Whew, okay, can we take a 2-minute break to run to the restroom?
Madam Chair, I have to get off for a work meeting here, so.
All right, does anyone else have to leave just to make sure we maintain our quorum? Because we do actually have real business to, other business. Other business to take care of. I just need to run to the restroom for 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Your time. Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yep. I'm gonna go do my work.
All right. Bob and Carrie, can you guys stay? Because we now only have, there's only 4 of us. We all, if anyone has to leave, I need to know.
I'm good for Whit here.
I can stay.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll try to move as quickly as we can through the rest of this here. Okay, so that brings us to the coroner update. Did you get anything from the coroner?
Sorry.
Brains are all melted.
That was perfect for me.
That's a question for you.
I do not have, well,
Doesn't look like.
I do have one, yeah. Yep. Calls in, I got 2 months worth of updates from the coroner. Calls in September, were 14, 5 were in hospice, 2 accident, 2 autopsies. Youngest was age 67, oldest was age 98, all cremations. Calls in October, 15, 7 hospice, 1 accident, 1 autopsy. Youngest was age 51, oldest was age 99, all cremations.
All right.
They're at 105 calls for the year. This gave us some comparisons, 2021, 121 cases, 2020, 118.
Well, it's probably COVID next.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Circuit Court Judge updates. She said she couldn't be here today. She was at a conference.
Yes.
Okay. So that brings us to Clerk of Court updates, which she did send us her report. Does anyone have any questions or any? Chelsea, right? Is that her?
Sarah.
Sarah, that's right.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Anyone have any questions for her? All right. Did you have anything you needed to add or?
All Stacy wanted me to mention is the budget is looking good and expenditures are in line and revenues are ahead of what we predicted. So, which is good compared to the terrible stuff we had to talk about earlier in the
Correct.
meeting, so.
Right. And thank you for your input. I mean, I think those are important questions we have to ask.
I hope I'm not overstepping and.
I mean, it's public, we're a public entity.
All in this together.
We're all, yeah, so I mean, they may have a response to that could help inform all of us too.
Right.
Because a lot of times we don't all understand exactly what's going on. I know I don't when they're talking about all that stuff, so. But I have noticed that they do have a lot of open positions, and I didn't look to see if those were the positions they weren't filling when they presented their information.
It was.
Was it? Yeah, okay. All right. Probate.
Just a quick comment, attorney fees are up. If you look at line items, you can tell attorney fees are up. I do anticipate a couple large ones still coming in. So, the registered probate budget is going to be very, very tight for 2022. Hopefully we're right there. We are, can you talk into the mic a little more? We are going to continue to scrutinize the attorney fees even more. The judge is looking at those closer than I've ever seen any judge look at them. And so, just bringing that to your attention that things are for 2022 are going to be tight.
Okay. Are they doing, is it that they're actually, because a lot of times you always say that they don't submit them timely, that they end up going into the next year, or whatever. So are those attorneys being better about actually submitting them on time?
Yes, so we have received more of them right now by the end of October than we have in the past. So they're showing up quicker, but they're always also, I'm a little surprised, they're always also showing up as increasing.
Oh, they've raised their prices.
So they're not raising their prices because they're locked at $100 per hour. Because they're court appointed. But it does look like we are going to court more on some of these cases.
All right. Anything else? Any questions? All right, that brings us to district attorney.
I actually,
Okay.
actually have, this is surprising for everyone. I actually have nothing that I can actually talk about.
All right. Well,
There's a lot of stuff going on, but I can't discuss.
okay. In a meeting like today, that's probably okay. We've had enough of the heavy stuff, yeah. All right, emergency management, director budget.
Working through the hazard mitigation plan approval with WEM and FEMA. I think we've gotten 7 townships, the village of Lone Rock, village of Yuba, and the city of Richland Center have also adopted it. So that process is going through. We heard back from Wisconsin Emergency Management, the plan reviewer, and got good feedback. I thought the plan was well written. There was only a couple minor things that we needed to add to that, so we're gonna do that. I'll know more this afternoon. If it's ready to go sit on FEMA's desk. So that's been good. It's been a long process. It'd be nice to have that completed. And it's first plan update we've done, which has generated a lot of good conversation and started bringing some folks together. So I think this next 5 years with that plan will be good.
And the draft is online on our website or?
The draft should be online, yes.
Yeah, and then when it's finalized, it'll permanently reside under the other part of our website, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
As far as budget, LEPC budget is, there's not a lot of wiggle room there. The emergency management budget, could be in jeopardy of going over. The 2003 Ford pickup that we used for a response to call the command post. It's got something going on. I think it's probably gonna be a significant repair, so I reached out to all the fire chiefs at the fire chief mutual aid meeting and said if they need the command post, they're gonna have to meet me and I will help them hook it up if they're gonna have to haul it themselves.
With their own vehicle.
Most of them can do that, I think, with the brush truck. But if the repair is what I think it is, I'll have to come back here and ask you what you wanna do, cause I think it will put it over budget.
Okay.
So
What is it?
I think it's blown head,
Yeah, those are pretty.
and it's a 6 liter and it's notorious for that. I mean, we've had it, I've got over 100-some thousand miles on it, so. For a diesel, that's not bad, but those 6 liter Fords, the early editions were kind of troublesome with that, so. It's blowing out white smoke and black smoke and no power. Been overheated. Coming back.
You would-
Some stuff.
You went and redid that vehicle too, didn't you? Like you did all the new body work on it.
Yeah, the body. We have a plan. We initially, in our budget with the administrator, we had put in a capital expenditure, I think, for 2025 to replace the truck. But I've got it worked out with the highway commissioner where instead of us replacing it, they'll just do a hand down on either his or superintendent's, so we can get some more life out of those vehicles. And not have to have that expenditure. So, you know, if we could have made this go another year or two, we'd be in good shape, but. We don't have very much money in that budget as it is, so I think if it's a significant repair, it's gonna put it over, so.
Okay, so you bring that to us next time, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it goes in the 14th to be looked at and diagnosed.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to staffing levels. So is that you guys? Or is that part of this?
I think that,
Did we?
It's just for departmental.
I think that's
Sure, you guys
departments
said
in
you wanted
general.
to. Yeah, it's for everybody.
Okay, I mean, that was as a part of this resolution, right? Or we're just gonna talk about staffing
I
levels?
think just where we're at, yeah.
I think Carrie had asked to have it on the agenda
Oh,
every
okay.
meeting for that.
So like a report as to what our staffing levels are?
I think that's what he asked Carrie if that's what he intended by that, but.
Supervisor Severson? Oh, he's there.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just trying to look at the packet here where we're at.
I don't believe, I don't believe there was any documentation for this. So I guess, maybe we just need some clarification. I thought we got clarification last month as to what you wanted. Were you just wondering how many staff there are in each department?
Open positions.
Or open positions or?
Yeah, just an overview of of where we're at on employees in the sheriff's department. Just a monthly thing, like, was there any resignations? Was there any terminations? Was there,
For the sheriff's department?
stuff like that?
Everyone else.
New hires.
So I guess I'll
Never
say
know.
that we currently have all of our funded positions filled.
And so, yeah, because we just interviewed jail dispatch,
Yep.
and so you guys
So we
hired,
just hired.
yeah.
James,
And so is Deputy Mo's position,
That is filled.
that is filled?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
well, there you go. All positions, not done, I feel like there's like something we should do. Saying that out loud seems like it's nice to ourselves. All right, so that brings us to item number 13, approved monthly invoices and other sheriff department reports. You want to start with the bills, or?
Yes, we can start with the bills. So there's a few items in here that were purchases that were made with the DOJ grant money. Those are highlighted. As well, I will comment, there is, Illinois Tollway bills, no detail. I supplied Deputy Shiljan with my iPass and registered one of the department vehicles under it, so he wouldn't have to stop at the tolls and we would pay a higher toll rate without
Yeah,
it.
you save money, you can have that.
So, that's just a reimbursement to me for the use of my iPass.
So did you just, the reason that it's in bold, meaning that it went over budget, is just because it's not a budgeted item? Right, okay. And then what about are they both that?
So I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
because number 14 is the Illinois Tollway, and number,
That's probably.
21.
correctly.
It was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because.
so they're both for the same purpose? Is that where his training was down? Oh, is this
It
K-Bank?
was in Indiana, so you had, Illinois Tollway in
In
Indiana.
Indiana, all the way
Yeah.
across, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this the K-9?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, does anyone else have any questions on the bills? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So
This is Bob, I'll second.
Motion by Greenwich, second by, we'll say Severson. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, bills are paid. You want to go to your just regular report next?
Yeah, monthly vouchers, 36,548, and number of jail bookings were at 37, so we're down slightly. Average number of inmates housed is up,
Yeah,
37.
I don't know if I've ever seen a number that big, sorry. I mean, I think
It
seriously, I don't think I've ever seen that number be quite so large.
Yeah, so there was, there were times, and maybe Bob can touch on this, that we were up in the 40s.
Yeah, that's since I've been here.
So, not that it was before I was here even, but it wasn't, when we were here, it was 40, is it 40
in the jail.
Okay, yeah.
At least we have 2 more on electronic monitoring. That helps. Every little bit.
Yep, and.
So is that mandatory overtime? Does that create that at 37?
There was one weekend where they had to do some overtime for it.
Yeah, when we hit that, it's mandatory, anything over 32, we're gonna hit a period of mandatory overtime. So, monthly complaints down slightly to 278, traffic citation issued down quite a bit. I'm gonna probably go out on a limb here and say that probably had something to do with Deputy Shiljan being at K-9 training for an entire month.
He's a prolific citation
Yes.
issuer.
Silver process, 15 transports for the month, 7 and 8 on electronic monitoring. Dispatch total calls for service were 510, 96 calls for EMS, 107 calls for Richland Center Police Department.
Is 510, is that number higher, lower, or above the same as what we've done? Pretty average. Okay, thank you. Any questions on that report? All right, so does that bring us to, that's it for your reports, right? So now we go to discussion of contracting law enforcement services for the village of Lone Rock.
Yes.
Okay, item number 14.
And Steve Morganson is here from the Village of Lone Rock Board. And thank you for coming and sitting through all of that.
For all of this, I'm so sorry. So sorry. So this is the draft contract that's in our,
So this is a draft contract and there's already some changes, that, Dan Quinn had contacted me about. One, I think is actually already included in the contract, which was they wanted to make sure that we would enforce village ordinances. And I think that is addressed in this current contract. The other is that with disbanding their police department, they would also be looking at disbanding their municipal court. And they would want, so this would be a conversation to have with Lisa, but they would want their municipal ordinances run through the Richland County Court.
I have no idea, how does that work?
I'm not sure how it works. That's why I say it'd probably be a good question for Lisa. They would probably, I imagine the village would still have to provide an attorney for prosecution of those ordinances, but that the judge would preside over.
Like we do for Richland Center?
Like we do for Richland Center, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we have any kind of like an MOU about that, or is that just something that happens when there's not another court to do it, the county, it defaults to the county?
That I'm not sure how to answer that.
Okay.
So, now, again, talking with Dan, Dan had told me originally 16 to 20 hours. I put the contract language in at 20 hours. Sounds like they may be considering less than that now, less than 20 hours.
I think the majority of the board was looking at 20 hours.
Okay, so my biggest concern with 20 hours, and the reason I bring this up for today's meeting is, I think we're gonna have a hard time guaranteeing 20 hours of service with our current staffing level to the village of Lone Rock. My hope is, that the village of Casanova is looking at something similar, but I don't know that they were wanting to put a set amount of hours down. They would
More
like
of an
their,
as needed?
they would like their village ordinances enforced. They're not necessarily looking for more law enforcement presence, is what I get from them. But they want their village ordinances enforced.
So if someone's violating an ordinance, they have someone to come and enforce it.
And need to be some sort of agreement. What I want to do is reach out to Denny Edelman and see if they would set a set amount of hours. With Lone Rock looking at 20, we're paying for about half of a deputy at that point. I think anything closer I can inch it to paying for all of a deputy, the better.
But then what you would say is at that point though, you would be hiring someone just to do these
Contract
contracted
work.
services.
Yes. Yeah.
Thoughts? So at this point, are you just informing us that this is discussions that
Well,
are happening?
I think Lone Rock is ready to move. It's just what we can do on our end, is what we're trying to figure out now. Yeah.
We have a few loose ends on our part as far as our ordinances go to get a completed copy to Richland County. But we're on board.
So if you don't get another community, are you willing to sacrifice 20 hours of a deputy though?
Yeah, I would prefer not to. And this goes back to, and I know this is a bold ask to come into a meeting after our last discussion. And maybe bold ask is an understatement. But we're already operating understaffed and I want to help the village of Lone Rock. The best way I see providing them the services they want is by adding a staff member. Ideally, we would have gotten that grant we applied for, and this probably really wouldn't be much of a discussion right now, because they would be picking up the matching funds.
The cops grant,
The cops grant, yeah,
but we didn't get that.
but we did not get that.
Okay.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
So how
So-
would the citations be transmitted? The same way they are right now?
So,
There's
yeah.
no change?
So all record management and stuff like that would be the same the way the sheriff's department does it. They'd be operating under sheriff's department policy with sheriff's department equipment, writing reports as a sheriff's department deputy. Everything would be, their ordinances would be added into tracks, and everything would be basically done the same way we currently operate.
And so Amber would check over them and then shoot them over to me, and that's where I would see them.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the way the contract, for those of you who haven't looked at the contract, we provide the a person at 20 hours a week, for $45 an hour. And that's to help cover wages, benefits, fuel, training hours, a little bit of wear and tear on the vehicle. The way the contract is kind of worded is that it would be a person, like, it would be a set person.
It wouldn't just be whatever deputy happens.
It wouldn't be whatever deputy happens to be available.
You
It
would
would
assign
be-
someone. How would that work though? Like, so how would that work if it's an assigned person? What about, it's, because obviously they aren't gonna work 7 days a week.
No.
And so what would happen on their days off? And
With it being 20 hours, we would give them
oh, it would be the days that deputy is on.
it would be the days that deputy is on.
But what, and if there's an emergency, then you would just respond because it's an emergency and you're the sheriff of the county.
There is a paragraph in here that in an event of an emergency, we could pull that deputy from.
I think she's talking about for.
Like,
if there's
if it's on
nobody
a day
there.
off. It's
Our-
on
our
if it's on that
deputies-
deputy's day off, but there's an emergency, we would just cover up there because we're the sheriff.
It's part of the county still,
Yeah.
so we still cover.
Right.
Like, or let's say if they took vacation, we would still provide them those hours. We would just fill it with another person.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so as it currently stands though, at just 20 hours of an officer, how would you feel it if you can't hire a new person? Or would you enter into this contract if you can't get another person?
I would probably have to reduce the amount of hours I could promise them.
Because I think that's the conversation we're having, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I can't fill this position,
If you can fully fund it,
if I could,
it becomes a different conversation.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so if Cass comes in or Viola or whoever comes in and says, we want 20 hours of a deputy, then it's a no-brainer. We can create a position it's paid for by
Mhm.
the two municipalities. But if it's just Lone Rock,
I
and
would,
you can't hire a new person, what are you gonna do?
I would not see Kaz doing any more than 10, and that might be a stretch. Like 10 might be a stretch.
So, yeah, so you still don't have a fully funded position.
I could be wrong, and like I said, they're just looking at this. They had me come to a meeting to discuss what the possibilities would be. They really had no idea of, maybe they did and didn't share with me, but they didn't. There was no discussion on how many hours. It was just kind of a, what would this look like
Right.
discussion.
And are there any other municipalities that might potentially be interested in an arrangement like this?
I mean, I had Richwood Township reach out to me and say, how do you enforce our ordinances? But, you know, I don't know that,
What is the answer to that question?
well, we need some sort of written agreement saying that we can enforce their ordinances.
Okay.
Yeah.
When they're taking to school, we talked about it.
The other idea was to, as I approach it, the school and see how many hours they would like.
What about Richland Center School?
And that's a,
Richland Center.
Oh, Center Police,
Yeah.
right.
and they're exploring that as well, so.
Is that the only other school that is actually housed in Richland County? Because, yeah, like
Yeah.
Riverdale is in
I like it, around the edges. Kicking through.
Viola, Kikos,
Weston.
Viola, yeah.
Must be.
Yeah, everyone else is.
So have you reached out to other municipalities to see if they could cover 10 hours?
Not at this time. I'm planning on calling Casnovi and seeing, well, my plan is to send them a cleaned up draft of what I've supplied with Lone Rock and saying, hey, this is what this could look like. Would you be interested in how many hours? Like, how many hours would interest you? The other issue here is, and then I spoke with Dan Quinn about this, is clearly this is adding a position and adding a position we didn't budget for 2023, and the budget's already approved.
But we'd have revenue to zero it out.
We would,
We
if
would
we
need
got
to
enough
have,
hours.
yeah, we would, I mean, I can't see any way forward unless we had the revenue to we're creating a new position. I can't see any way that we would ever get that approved unless there was revenue to cover the full cost of the position, or at least most of them. Well, it'd have to be the full cost at this point. I mean, in this current state, during our current discussions, with all of everything else that's going on, I would, at least that's my opinion. I can't.
Agreement that we do lower hours and then in the future move it up. If
You
we,
mean start out with offering 10 hours a week and it would just be a deputy that you currently have on staff and they would just get reimbursed for 10. So you take them off of general
I think what,
duties for 10 hours a week.
at that point, what I would have to amend the contract as well, is that we couldn't promise them a single, this is your person. This is the person. And I think that's probably in the best interest of Lone Rock, is having a person dedicated, because then they become more familiar with the individual issues that Lone Rock is looking at, and having a dedicated person. But it would be hard to do that, reduce hours, and with my current staffing, say, hey, we're gonna give you this person for this many hours a week, when that person may not be available for that many hours a week. Where I can say, we'll give you one of 12, you know, it'll be one of 12 at any given time.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you run into issues with different officers having a different interpretation of ordinances. People getting annoyed that one person got ticketed and another person didn't, or whatever. Thoughts, committee?
Yes, this is Bob. My thoughts are, I would encourage I understand the 1 in 12 is a big gap. I think the 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 officers that could help cover. I think that in Lone Rock, having some people that can go in and cover vacations, or if someone's on training, I think more than just one. Maybe you have a primary and you've got 1 or 2 that are also identified to be part of that project, and they can collaborate. I'd like to hear what the judge has to say. I don't know if we can have all this information ready for next meeting, but it is a contract, and what is the process of a contract being approved? Is that the county administrator's final word? I'm not sure how that works with this.
Council obviously would be involved.
And he's seen the contract.
Yes.
Yeah.
To me, it more comes down to the logistics of if you're asking, can we add a position so that we can cover contracts with other municipalities? That's a different, do I think that we could provide the service for them? Sure, but if you want to add a position to do it and it's not fully funded by the people needing that service, that's where I struggle. I would struggle are you asking us to approve this today, or what action are you looking for today?
I mean, I think the discussion needs to start, and ideally I would have had more time to reach out to Ithaca Schools, Village of Casanova, and come up with, try to eat up more of that price tag.
How much of a difference would 1 month make to you? Sorry, I can't. How much of it, if we delay this by 1 month so he can gather more information to see if there's other municipalities that could help cover the rest of this position, how detrimental is that to Lone Rock if we wait 1 more month? Okay, so that would be my suggestion. Can you come back to us next month with, here's who I've reached out to and here's what they've said, and here's how much of a position we think could be funded by this? It ideally 100%, but whatever, let's find out what the number is of what could be covered. If you're asking us to create a new position, if you're not asking us to create a new position, that's a different conversation. Then if I think you have officers who have time to do it, then sure. But I don't think that's the question you're asking us.
I'm asking to create another position, and I think that I'm not sure we'll be able to come to a point where we hit 100% covered. I'm gonna be upfront in saying that, but I want to get as close to that as I possibly can, and then I'll come back and ask you for more.
Okay.
So.
What happens though when Cass wants Friday night and Lone Rock wants Friday night?
I have discretion over when those hours are provided for the contract.
So I don't know if you was online, the question was asked, what if Kaz wants coverage on a Friday night and Lone Rock wants coverage on a Friday night? And that was the answer that Clay, or he has the discretion.
Yeah. Ultimately, they're my employee. I still have management control over that person. They're my employee.
Right, that's what the contract's for. It spells all that out.
Don't you still have the ability to have a deputy float that way in that northwest quarter to maybe spend a little time in Casanova, but still float around? Wouldn't you still have that ability to do that?
That's what I was gonna say, Gary, is that, still Casanova and Lone Rock, they're still part of the county, so.
Right.
If we don't have any deputies on that specifically assigns that jurisdiction, if a call comes in, we still have to
You can
handle
respond.
those calls, so.
So right now, how does it work? If a call comes in from Lone Rock, their officer gets dispatched?
If they're working, yes.
Okay, and if they're not working, you cover?
We cover it.
Okay. So why don't we have a more in-depth conversation in December with you having reached out to whoever you feel is appropriate to reach out to, and let's just have that full conversation about.
And that'll give us a little bit more time, I think, to figure out the judicial side of it, which is.
Yeah, because I think we're gonna want to make sure that's all spelled out.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, anything else on that? No? All right, radio tower project updates. Oh, whoops, what? Oh, sorry, open and approve squad bids. Let's go there, sorry, Barb, we're gonna go there first. So Sheriff Porter has a sealed envelope that he's opening,
Well, I also have an email that's,
and an email that you're opening?
thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Well sealed envelope.
Lick tea, Olson.
No.
This is quite good.
So we had, so we have a bid from Phil Dax for. That's not the bid price, this is the bid price. So we have a sealed bid from Phil Back for $39,757.50.
For how many vehicles? Two?
That's per vehicle.
Per vehicle, yeah, right, of course,
Yeah.
what am I thinking?
And
And how many did we ask? Two?
oh,
We asked for three, but we don't think we're gonna be able to fund three with the borrowed funds. And are we gonna be retiring any other vehicles that we can take equipment out of, or we think we have to fully equip these?
Different squads.
they're different, we're not gonna be taking anything out of. We're not gonna be taking anything out of service that's gonna go into this.
Okay,
These are Durangos.
okay, that's first one.
Yeah, so these would be 2023 Dodge Durangos.
I thought we didn't like the Durangos. We do like the
Well,
Durangos?
we didn't not like the Durangos. The issue is that we can't order a Ford anymore. Ford 2023 Ford ordering is done.
Except for, well, we got trucks before, like last year. Did we get that
Well,
truck?
we got our last year's vehicles,
Okay,
which we were able to get Fords, but we did not order a 2023 Ford fleet vehicle anymore. It's already closed.
okay.
And then we
How are
have,
Durangos doing that are in service?
we don't really have much for issues. There's been some small things, that have been covered
I
under.
was gonna say they happened right away, right?
Yeah, there's been some small things that have been covered under warranty, but really nothing continuing and ongoing.
Nothing that would make you hesitant to go ahead and get more Durangos?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
At 39,000 something a piece.
Yeah.
Okay,
Where was,
and that's Spillback, right?
yes, where's the price you guys have on?
Who else did we get bids from? That's
So
really,
we also got a bid from Ewald and I'm trying to find,
where's Ewald?
I think it's Waukesha area.
Oh.
Ewald gets the state bid contract,
Oh, okay,
so,
like State Patrol? Or-
state fleet bid pricing.
Oh, okay.
There's two documents in there, the one was just expect.
I thought you guys said it was lower than this.
So did our bids go out asking for Durangos?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Durangos and Durangos only.
Okay,
It wasn't in the other document. Sorry, there's. It's just this.
We're gonna start my question sheet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so, they came in slightly under at $39,402.50.
What was the change on the fillback, 39.1?
39,757.50.
57 versus 39,402. So do we take the lowest bid, or do we do considerations for local versus not local? I don't know. Are we obligated?
Difference is what, $400? This is Bob. What was the difference? Like $400?
350-ish.
I would move, we go with the local for $350. We just go with the local bid.
Definitely local.
Does Fillback, when we have warranty issues, are they the people that take care of our,
Yes.
and would they take care of warranty issues from another dealer anyway? So I guess
Yeah.
service wise, they would still get that, but yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. Supervisor Severson?
Yeah, by the time you drive down to pick those up and bring them back, you're already losing that $350.
Staff tech go right down there and get them.
Supervisor Severson, do you have any concerns?
I just don't want to have an issue like we had at the fairgrounds with the bidding for like $100 or whatever it was at that time. So just do whatever is right, so we don't get complaining from people that are local.
What would you consider to be right? Take the local bid? Or
If
not?
it's $300, I don't see that big of a deal over it. I mean, yeah, we need to be a little conscious of it, but that's not a lot of money. Yeah, it is money, but compared to what Philbacks does, and we're always talking about shop local and sales tax and all this other stuff to help our coffers out, it's like it's a no-brainer.
We're tax exempt.
No,
Yeah, we're
yeah, we're
tax
tax
exempt, yeah. Okay, so I guess I would need a motion to, someone needs to state a motion as to what they'd like us to do.
So this is Bob. I'll make a motion to accept the fillback bid for the squads.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Can you guys online say that again?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. We will go with the fillback bid. Item number 16, radio tower project updates.
Sorry, keep this down. So we began having, weekly meetings. And we meet every Wednesday morning. We have found some problems, which we anticipated. We're trying to work through them. We are looking at another additional meeting on Monday. We will not be installing the consoles until January because we have to integrate them with the cameras and the doors in the jail. And they can't get the specs written and stuff done for them.
Okay.
So it's just putting away everything.
So I will mention to everyone that I did contact Mike Day to ask where we are as far as are we on track to have information about the number of towers we will need before we will go to borrow the money in January. And he indicated to me that he thinks that he will by Thanksgiving, but certainly by the end of the year, be able to tell us how many towers we will need to build to create our system. So he assures me we're on track. I hope that's true because I don't want to be trying to borrow the money until we know exactly how much money we actually need.
On our meeting on Wednesday, Clinton talked to him and we weren't anticipating that information until February.
He told me end of the year, so we'll see.
Clinton,
Not Clint, Mike Day.
because that was what we talked about on Wednesday. And Clinton
I have
told me
I have the email. I can read it.
he needed it by,
Um,
I don't know.
I think, I mean, if we aren't borrowing the money till February, I'm okay with not having the information until February.
And that's when we're
I mean,
borrowing.
the most important piece is knowing for sure how many towers we have to build so that we know for sure we are only borrowing exactly what we need to do the project and not borrowing too much or, well, we can't borrow more than 8.5. But if we don't need the 8.5, I do not want to borrow the 8.5.
Totally.
So as long as we can have the information by February, I'm fine with it. I don't care
Yep.
whether it comes in. I mean, it'd be nice to have a little time to digest, but whatever.
Hopefully.
Yeah, okay. So, but consoles are on schedule to be, because we've been shooting for the first of the year.
Yep.
So-
And it's looking like they will be. It's just getting through. They were here Tuesday of this week or last 2 weeks kind of all together. And they did their walkthrough. That's one of the concerns. The numbers that we have from them were $300,000. They
For the
came-
consoles?
No, for the
Oh, for the doors.
cameras and the doors. And they came back with a much higher number, and I told them that wasn't acceptable. We've already had somebody in to look at it, and what they said didn't seem to fit with what we've already heard, and we needed that revisited.
Okay. Alrighty then. So it's moving, but maybe a little slower than we
Crawling.
liked. Yeah, but it's still moving forward.
I feel like it's not growing. I feel like it's moving every day. It's just taking time.
Okay. All right. Mapping radio systems and squad updates. I didn't even look at the squads this time. Oh, there's only 4 in red. Anyone have any questions or comments on the mileage or anything? Do you have anything you want to add on mapping? For squads?
Not, we do have the 2 new squads back. One is semi in service, it would be the K9 car, and the other one probably be in service shortly. But they are here, and they are equipped. So,
When will the new dog be?
so he actually, tomorrow night will be his first shift since he returned. Yep.
I kind of want to meet him. What does he look like? It's a he, I assume.
Yeah.
Are they all he's? Are they all he's?
Yeah, well, not all of them, but he is, it's a brindle, he looks like a brindle, Belgian Malinois. He's a Dutch Shepherd.
So, is he similar to Rambo then and what he looks like? The
No,
brindle?
different. Yeah, have you seen a picture of him?
No, that's why I'm asking what he looks like.
It's on Facebook.
It's on the Facebook page.
Oh, I don't know the Facebook page.
But he looks like a striped Belgian Malinois, black.
Oh,
Yeah,
beautiful. And how old is he?
a year and a half.
All right, is there anything else to update on that? All right, that brings us to future agenda items. So I think one future agenda item would be then to revisit
Yeah.
the contracting, yeah. Anything else? We will have our jail inspection, but it probably won't be until I think we had it in January, didn't we, last year?
And so.
Or was it December?
Oh,
The closed session, did we do that after our December meeting? Did
it was
we?
December because we,
And then I wrote it up and we approved it at the January, right?
yeah, I think so.
So we should, I guess I probably have to email, well, there's 4 of us here. What we did last year is we went into closed session after our December meeting and went into and did our inspection that we are required by state statute. The county board is required to inspect the jail yearly. So we did it for the first time. So we will need to do that at the December meeting. So I guess I'll contact everyone and confirm, but Carrie and Bob and Ken, so our next meeting would be the 1st December, which is what? Be the 2nd, December 2nd. So
That should be fine.
okay, because it'll go a little long, although we won't be talking about, I mean, it should just still be way shorter than
You say
today.
it's gonna be shorter than.
It's way shorter than today, I hope. God, I hope. But anyway, that's how we handled it last year. It seemed to work pretty well. So we did our inspection and then I wrote up anything that we found that we needed to discuss with, and then we discussed it in open session. The next one, but it was an abbreviated, because there are obviously security concerns where you can't discuss every little detail of the inner workings of the jail in an open meeting for security. And we did confirm with corporate counsel that that was appropriate. All right, so we will, is that okay? We'll plan on December 2nd, doing the committee.
I will say the showers and stuff like that have been repaired, so those repairs were done. There was a little bit of an
One
issue.
second, you're right.
There was a little bit of an issue. I made the contractor come back and fix a few things.
But the sheriff, but essentially they've been fixed.
They've been fixed.
And the jail inspector, when he was here, they were not fixed, but
They
he
were
knew they
not.
were coming.
Yeah,
And so when he comes for his follow-up,
we can show them.
we can show him that they're done.
Yep.
And, okay. All right, so with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Reynolds.
Bob will second.
All right, second by Frank. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll do the same as last year. So I will, as long as we have, 'cause last year, I believe, because when he does his closeout, you have the report in hand, right?